Chapter 1743. Yin Yao's words interrupted Grandma Long's train of thought. She came back to her senses and looked at Yin Yao with a complicated gaze. She sighed. Sigh. The flaming mountain is extremely dangerous. The glazed fire dragon is also a noble and powerful divine beast that cannot be tamed. Why do you want to take the risk? Yin Yao looked at Grandma Long with a firm gaze and said calmly, Grandma Long, we know what you said. We will be careful. Moreover, a martial artist's cultivation is like sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you will fall behind. Over the years, the two of us have gone through so many hardships and endured so many life and death crises. Because of this, we were able to grow so quickly and become the favored ones of the heavens. Grandma Long saw that Yin Yao's attitude was firm and her words were reasonable, so she temporarily relented. Fine, since you insist on going, this old one won't stop you. As for the water reverse divine sword, Yin Yao will follow me to the secret chamber and report to the divine master personally. There shouldn't be any problems. After all, the divine master has mentioned to me before that he has already planned to bestow the water reverse divine sword to you. However, your strength is not enough, and the time is not ripe, so this matter has been put on hold. Yin Yao and Ji Tianqing were startled when they heard the news. They were in disbelief. What? The divine master has already planned to bestow the water reverse divine sword to me? Yin Yao looked at Grandma Long in disbelief. Grandma Long nodded and said, yes. With the divine master's strength and means, there is basically no need for him to use the water reverse divine sword. You are the divine master's most valued disciple and the only divine lady. Of course, he will bestow the divine sword to you. Yin Yao came back to her senses and said with a gratified expression, if that's the case, then it will be easy. Grandma Long, let's go to the secret chamber and report to the divine master. Grandma Long couldn't help but smile bitterly when she saw how scheming she was. Sigh. You are usually calm and wise, but when it comes to Tianqing, you can't keep your cool. Yin Yao just smiled faintly and didn't say anything. After that, Granny Long left the main hall with Yin Yao and went to the secret chamber. Ji Tianqing also left the meeting hall and returned to Cloudwater Palace. While waiting for Yin Yao to return, he took out the sandalwood box from his spatial ring. He placed the sandalwood box on the table and slowly opened it. Shwa! A dazzling red light immediately blossomed from the treasure box, illuminating the entire room with a red glow. Ji Tianqing looked down and saw a fist-sized fiery red crystal lying quietly in the box. This crystal was oval in shape, and its surface was very smooth, like a cobblestone. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that the surface of the gem was dark red, as if it was wrapped in a layer of flowing fire. But in reality, the inside of the gem was dark gold, and it emitted an incomparably violent and blazing aura. Ji Tianqing stared at the gem and observed it for a while, then murmured in a low voice, it is indeed a pure and flawless heavenly flame true gold. If I want to repair the sword of burial of heaven, I need to gather 4 top-notch materials. Now that I have the heavenly flame true gold, I only need the wind thunder meteorite iron, the yin yang divine jade, and the golden crow copper marrow. Thinking of this, he closed his eyes and began to meditate, and his primordial spirit entered Kenshin's tomb. Then, his primordial spirit entered the divine weapon pavilion through the second tombstone. In the huge divine weapon pavilion, there was a huge heavenly cauldron in the middle of the main hall, exuding an ancient and mysterious aura. There were more than 360 secret compartments carved into the walls of the main hall, and more than 300 kinds of refining materials were stored inside. Each of the refining materials was a rare top-notch treasure, and their value was no less than that of the heavenly flame true gold. There were even many ores and gems that were more valuable than the heavenly flame true gold. Ji Tianqing opened the secret compartments one by one, and checked the treasures stored inside to find the materials he needed. After a full 2 hours, he had checked more than 300 secret compartments, and only found the yin-yang divine jade. As for the wind thunder meteorite iron and the golden crow copper marrow, the divine weapon pavilion did not have them. Ji Tianqing took the yin yang divine jade and left the divine weapon pavilion. Swoosh! After his primordial spirit returned to its original position, he put the yin yang divine jade and the heavenly flame true gold into the space ring. Now that I have 2 sets of materials, if I can find the other 2 in the flaming mountain, it will be a success. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself, I wonder what grade the burial of heaven will be restored to after I gather those 4 materials and repair the sword body. The voice of the burial of heaven immediately rang in his mind. Those 4 sets of materials are top-notch treasures, and can be used to refine saint-level Dharma treasures. Ji Tianqing immediately understood what it meant, and asked in disbelief, Burial of heaven, do you mean that after I repair the sword body for you, you can be restored to saint level? Of course. The burial of heaven answered without hesitation. Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed, and his heart started to beat faster. That's great. If it can really be restored to saint level and become a complete holy sword, its power will definitely increase by dozens of times. At that time, even if I encounter a powerhouse at the 5th or 6th level of the crossing calamity realm, I will be able to defeat him. Not long after, Yun Yao returned to the room. Ji Tianqing suppressed the distracting thoughts in his heart, looked at her with concern, and asked, Yao Yao, how is it? Did the Luoshui martial god agree? Yun Yao smiled and nodded. Granny Long reported the ins and outs of the matter to the Divine Master. The Divine Master was also quite displeased that the Heaven Absolute Divine Kingdom wanted to borrow the Reverse Water Divine Sword. However, the North Underworld Mountain and the Heaven Absolute Divine Kingdom attacked at the same time, and the Divine Kingdom was attacked from both sides. After I explained the situation to the Divine Master, the Divine Master has agreed to give me the Reverse Water Divine Sword in advance. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing showed a gratified smile and nodded, that's good. With the Reverse Water Divine Sword, we can enter the Mountain of Flames. Yun Yao hesitated for a moment and then said, Granny Long will leave tomorrow and go to the Divine Kingdom to get the Reverse Water Divine Sword. She will come back in about 10 days. It just so happens that my heavenly tribulation is coming soon. It will come in about half a month. When I get the Reverse Water Divine Sword, I will definitely have more confidence to pass the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianqing's body shook immediately, and his eyes were filled with disbelief and a touch of worry. Yao Yao, you are going to pass the heavenly tribulation in half a month? Why didn't you say such an important thing earlier? Yun Yao shook her head gently and comforted in a soft voice, Tianqing, you don't have to worry about me. It's only the first heavenly tribulation, and it shouldn't be too powerful. Even without the Reverse Water Divine Sword, I am confident that I can pass it. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and nodded, that's true. With your strength and aptitude, passing the first heavenly tribulation will be easy. In that case, we will wait patiently for Granny Long to come back with the Divine Sword. After you pass the heavenly tribulation, we will go to the Mountain of Flames in the Divine Ruins. Chapter 1744. Unknowingly, 10 days had passed. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were cultivating in seclusion in their respective chambers. In order to face the impending heavenly tribulation, Yun Yao cultivated without any distractions. She tried her best to raise her strength and strengthen her martial foundation. No matter what, she had to do her best to face the heavenly tribulation. She could not afford any mistakes or accidents. 10 days of cultivation had indeed raised her strength significantly. Her martial foundation had become more solid. However, she had already reached the peak of the Essence Soul realm. Even if her strength had increased, it was limited. The date of the heavenly tribulation was approaching. She felt a heavy pressure on her heart. The feeling in her heart was becoming clearer and clearer. Her heavenly tribulation would descend in 6 days. Ji Tianqing cultivated in seclusion for 10 days. His strength was still at the peak of the Essence Soul realm. However, his sword intent had become more condensed and had formed a basic embryonic form. It was tenacious and indomitable, looking down on the world. This was his sword intent. It represented his will and sword Tao beliefs. The increase in sword intent would not increase his strength, but it would make his sword Tao more powerful and outstanding. He was looking forward to seeing how powerful his sword Tao would be when he completely comprehended sword intent. As for his heavenly tribulation, he still could not sense the aura of the heavenly tribulation. He did not know when it would arrive. In any case, he had already grasped the power of the divine lightning. He did not take the heavenly tribulation to heart. He did not feel that it would be much of a threat. That evening, Granny Long finally returned to Luotian Mountain. After she returned to her residence, she rested for a moment before sending a maidservant to Cloud Water Palace. Yunyao had been waiting for news in Cloud Water Palace. When she heard that Granny Long had returned, she hurriedly rushed to meet her. The two met in Granny Long's study. Yunyao bowed to her and asked with concern, "Granny, did your trip to the Divine Kingdom go smoothly?" Granny Long smiled and nodded. "Everything went smoothly. I have also brought back the water reversal divine sword that the Divine Lord bestowed upon you." As she spoke, she took out a treasured sword from her interspatial ring. It was a 3-foot-long divine sword. It was stored in a silver-white sword case. Its design was exquisite and beautiful. The surface of the scabbard was engraved with exquisite patterns and complicated formation runes. It was obvious that there was a seal on it. The sword sheath was suffused with a silver light, like the radiance of the stars in the night sky, emitting a divine aura. Yunyao stared at the sword box with burning eyes. She slowly stretched out her hands and held the sword box in her hands, carefully observing it. The divine sword was light in his hand and gave him a cool feeling. The silver-white sword hilt was engraved with complicated patterns, and it glowed with a faint ice-blue brilliance. Yunyao only felt a strong, icy aura coming from the sword hilt and entering her body through her palm. However, that powerful icy aura did not make her feel uncomfortable. Instead, it gave her a feeling of communication. It felt as if the divine sword had become one with her arm, and she could control it with her will. Clang! She held the scabbard in her left hand and the hilt in her right hand. She pulled out the sword with a little force. Suddenly, a 3-foot-long ice-blue sword blade appeared in front of her eyes. The blade of the sword was as wide as 2 fingers. Its entire body was ice blue, as if it was made of crystal, sparkling and translucent, spotless. A layer of dense, ice-blue brilliance flowed on the surface of the sword blade, making the divine sword look very mysterious. She could clearly feel that there was a power that could destroy heaven and earth hidden in the divine sword. It was just that it was holding back. Once she swung the sword, she could easily split open the Luotian mountain and destroy everything within a few hundred miles. This was the power of the divine sword. Yunyao stared at the divine sword without blinking. She was a little excited and muttered softly, as expected of the reverse water divine sword refined by the divine master. It is really a rare divine weapon in the world. Granny Long looked at her kindly and reminded her, "Yunyao, other than this reverse water divine sword, the divine master also imparted a set of sacrificial and sword control techniques. They are all improved for you. I will impart the techniques to you later. Try to refine the divine sword in the next few days. Only after you refine the divine sword will it truly belong to you. It will be connected to your mind and you will be able to use it like your own arm. Only then will you be able to unleash more power." Yunyao nodded and put the sword back into its sheath. She cupped her hands and said, "Granny, please impart the techniques to me." Granny Long silently channeled her energy for a moment. Then, a ball of dense white light flew out from her forehead. The egg-sized ball of white light contained complicated seal words and symbols. It was shining brightly. Granny Long pointed with her right hand and the ball of light entered Yunyao's forehead. Suddenly, a huge amount of information flooded her mind. Her mind was bloated and her consciousness was a little blurry. After 10 breaths, she returned to normal. She bowed to Granny Long and said, "Granny, I will take my leave now. My heavenly tribulation will descend in 6 days." Granny Long nodded slightly and reminded her, "Then you must refine the divine sword in the next few days no matter what. 6 days later, you will undergo your tribulation on the solitary cloud peak in the back mountain." Yunyao nodded and left with the reverse water divine sword. After returning to the secret room in the Cloud Water Palace, she did not care about anything else. She focused on cultivating and refining the divine sword. 6 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, Yunyao was sitting cross-legged in the secret room. She was making hand seals with both hands. Her body was surging with boundless magic power and was emitting a dazzling light. In front of her, 2 feet above the ground, floated a divine sword that was completely ice blue in color. The divine sword was shining with a dazzling blue light and was emitting a vast and holy aura. An invisible connection was formed between her and the divine sword. It was as if they had become one. After a while, the sun rose from the east. The golden sun shone on the Luotian mountain. At the same time, the ice blue light on the divine sword disappeared. Yunyao also stopped. Clang! The divine sword returned to its scabbard. It turned into a wisp of icy light and disappeared into her body. Phew! She opened her eyes and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. A gratified smile appeared in her eyes. Finally, the refinement is complete. She got up and left the secret room. Ji Tianqing was already waiting outside the secret room. When he saw Yunyao come out, he looked her up and down and smiled. "Looks like Yao Yao, you've already completed the refinement of the divine sword." He could clearly sense that Yunyao's temperament had changed. There was a hint of holiness and coldness in her. At the same time, Yunyao's strength and aura had reached a critical point. Her body seemed to contain a power that could destroy the world and turn the universe upside down. Yunyao nodded and said, "It went well. Let's go." After saying that, the two left the Cloud Water Palace side by side and rushed to the back mountain of the Luotian mountain. The back mountain was very steep. Usually, no one went in or out. Especially the solitary cloud peak. It was isolated on the edge of the cliff. It was like a stone tablet standing on the peak of the mountain. White clouds and thick fog covered most of the solitary cloud peak. Chapter 1745. Under the morning sun, Lone Cloud Peak was covered with a layer of light gold. There was no grass on the platform at the top of the mountain. The ground was full of uneven rock layers. There were many cracks and pits on the ground, and there were scorched marks left by the lightning strikes. Apparently, the tribulation cultivators of Luotian Mountain often went through the heavenly tribulation on Lone Cloud Peak. When Ji Tianqing and Yunyao arrived at Lone Cloud Peak, Grandma Long was already there and had been waiting for them for a long time. Apart from Grandma Long, there were a few young disciples of God, a dozen deacons, and many guards. A few days ago, the news that Yunyao was going to go through the heavenly tribulation had spread on Luotian Mountain. As the first disciple of Luotian Mountain and the most honorable goddess, she had always been the center of attention. Now, she was the first disciple of God to go through the heavenly tribulation. Of course, everyone came to watch the show. Seeing Yunyao and Ji Tianqing, Grandma Long looked at them kindly and said in a serious tone, "Yunyao, this is your first heavenly tribulation. It's very important and you can't make any mistakes. I still need to tell you about the taboos and tricks of the heavenly tribulation in case there are any accidents. The heavenly tribulation is the supreme will of heaven. There are established rules and you can't go against them. When Yunyao goes through the heavenly tribulation later, she can only stand on Lone Cloud Peak alone. No one can go near her, let alone help her. When the heavenly tribulation starts, there will be a tribulation cloud that will cover the entire Lone Cloud Peak and suppress only Yunyao. If someone enters the tribulation cloud, the power of the heavenly tribulation will be doubled. If anyone helps Yunyao to resist the heavenly tribulation, the power of the heavenly tribulation will be doubled. By then, everyone will be annihilated. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao nodded to show that they understood. Don't worry, Grandma Long. I won't interfere. Grandma Long, don't worry. I can handle the heavenly tribulation alone. Grandma Long nodded slightly and continued, the heavenly tribulation of each person is different because of their talent. The heavenly tribulation of mediocre people usually only has 3 heavenly thunders. If they can resist the heavenly tribulation, they can pass it successfully. Those with outstanding aptitude would attract 4 to 6 bolts of heavenly lightning. Moreover, the heavenly lightning would also contain the power of other attributes. Peerless geniuses with extraordinary talent would attract more than 6 bolts of heavenly lightning. Furthermore, the heavenly lightning would mutate and possess strange and unpredictable powers. Yunyao, I'm worried that since your aptitude is too outstanding, the heavenly tribulation you attract will also be extraordinary. Regarding this point, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao had already learned about it and were well aware of it. Granny, don't worry. I know what I'm doing, and I'm confident that I can deal with it. Yunyao looked at Granny Long with a firm gaze, her voice filled with confidence. Only then did Granny Long feel relieved. She nodded and said, That's good. When you're ready, you can ascend Solitary Cloud Peak. After saying that, Granny Long led the gods' apprentices, deacons, and guards and flew up into the sky. Everyone stood in the sky 20 miles away from Solitary Cloud Peak, ready to watch Yunyao go through the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianqing held Yunyao's hand and encouraged her with a smile, Yao Yao, I believe that you'll definitely go through it smoothly. You won't let me down, and there won't be any accidents, right? Yunyao nodded and said calmly, Tianqing, wait for me here. I'll be back soon. After saying that, she turned around and flew up into the sky, landing on Solitary Cloud Peak with her clothes fluttering in the wind. Solitary Cloud Peak was surrounded by clouds and a strong wind was blowing. Yunyao stood on the peak of the mountain, her clothes and hair fluttering in the wind. Her entire body exuded an otherworldly immortal qi. She stood quietly on a huge rock and closed her eyes, slowly releasing the vast dharmic powers in her body. Suddenly, a formless and vast aura shot up into the sky, straight into the sky. At this moment, she didn't hide or suppress her power anymore. She completely released it and showed her most powerful side. The majestic and violent power immediately shrouded the entire Solitary Cloud Peak. The surrounding sea of clouds and dense fog were immediately dispersed, and the fierce wind suddenly stopped. Then, thick gray clouds appeared in the sky, coming from all directions and gathering in the sky above Solitary Cloud Peak. After a short while, a cloud with a radius of 50 miles formed above Solitary Cloud Peak. It was like a huge whirlpool that spun rapidly. The golden sun was blocked, and the light in the sky became dim. A strong wind blew from the top of Solitary Cloud Peak and spread in all directions. A sacred and vast invisible power came down from the sky and shrouded the entire Solitary Cloud Peak. That was the invisible will of the heavenly Tao. Ji Tianqing, the god apprentices, and the guards all felt their hearts sink and they felt quite depressed. Even Granny Long and the deacons were in awe under the sacred and invisible will of the heavenly Tao. Yunyao, who was on Solitary Cloud Peak, was in the center of the storm and had to bear the most powerful suppression. Her expression turned serious as she stood proudly on top of the mountain. There was no fear on her face. Soon, the gray clouds in the sky shrunk to a radius of 20 miles and became as dark as ink. The clouds spun faster and faster, and electric arcs started to flash in the huge whirlpool. Granny Long murmured seriously, the tribulation cloud has formed. The first heavenly thunder is coming. As expected. After a short while, the thousands of electric arcs in the tribulation cloud formed a sacred thunderbolt and struck down. Kaboom! With an earth-shattering sound, a 300-foot-long purple heavenly thunder as thick as a water tank struck down from the sky toward Yunyao. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing, Granny Long, and the other gods' disciples felt their hearts in their mouths. They were all very worried. Yunyao, who was on solitary cloud peak, was not afraid at all. She raised her head to look at the bolt of lightning, and a brilliant light flashed in her right hand, and a sparkling and translucent ice-blue sword appeared. It was the reverse water divine sword. She made a sword art with her left hand and held the divine sword with her right hand. She stabbed at the thunderbolt in the sky with all her strength. Swish! 1,000-foot-long icy blue sword radiance appeared in the sky and collided with the heavenly thunder with an unstoppable force. Boom! There was an earth-shattering sound when the two collided. It spread across the entire Luotian mountain and shocked everyone within a few hundred miles. The heavenly thunder was destroyed by the sword radiance. It exploded into hundreds of purple electric arcs and scattered on solitary cloud peak. Boom! 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 The barren solitary cloud peak started to shake. Many cracks appeared on the ground and gravel splashed everywhere. Yunyao stood on top of the millstone. Everything around her was safe and sound. She didn't see any lightning. After a while, the gravel and the lightning dissipated. Peace was restored on the peak of the mountain. She looked up at the sky calmly and waited for the second heavenly thunder to strike. In the sky 20 miles away, many gods' apprentices, deacons, and guards were dumbfounded by what they saw. Everyone had a horrified expression on their faces. They simply couldn't believe their own eyes. The sacred and violent heavenly thunder was destroyed by Yunyao with one strike. Chapter 1746. The deacons, God's disciples, and the guards were not the only ones who were stunned. Even Granny Long's eyes narrowed in disbelief. She had seen others go through the heavenly tribulations at least 100 times over the past few hundred years. However, she had never seen anyone who was going through the heavenly tribulation so confidently. Not only did she face the heavenly lightning head-on, but she had also destroyed it with her sword. She was a martial sage and had gone through the heavenly tribulations before. Every time she went through the heavenly tribulations, it was a painful memory that she could not bear to recall. She knew how scary the heavenly tribulations were, and that was why she was worried about Yunyao's safety. However, Yunyao's performance had overturned her understanding of the heavenly tribulation and opened her eyes. It seems like, this is the power of a top genius and the divine sword. Granny Long looked at Yunyao with shining eyes and murmured in amazement. At that moment, the second heavenly lightning was brewing in the calamity cloud vortex in the sky. Tens of thousands of purple lightning arcs gathered in the calamity cloud vortex and formed a pillar of purple lightning. It was 400 feet long and it struck down from the sky. The power of the second heavenly lightning was more than 2 times stronger than the first one. Kaboom! Thunder roared and the dazzling lightning tore through the sky and lit up the dark sky. It was so bright that people could not open their eyes. Granny Long and the rest of the people were nervous again as they looked at Yunyao. They were worried for her. Ji Tianqing was the only one who looked at Yunyao calmly. He was not worried. After all, he knew Yunyao the best. The heavenly lightning pillar was like a huge sea Dian dragon as it struck toward Yunyao. It was about to engulf her. However, she was fearless. Her body was as straight as a sword and her aura was as calm as water. All of a sudden, she moved. She formed a sword art with her left hand and drew dozens of arcs in front of her to form a mysterious word. She held the reverse water divine sword in her right hand and stabbed 9 times toward the sky. Swoosh! 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 9 rays of dazzling blue sword radiance shot out like lightning. They formed a 9 palaces formation and stabbed toward the heavenly lightning pillar. She did not block the heavenly lightning and chose to face it. This scene shocked Granny Long and everyone else. Their hearts almost stopped beating. Bang 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 bang. A third of an instant later, the 9 giant icy blue swords struck the bolt of heavenly lightning with boundless divine might. A series of heaven-shaking explosions erupted, resounding through the clouds and shaking the entire Luotian mountain. The 9 sword lights collapsed on the spot, shattering into billions of ice crystals that rained down like torrential rain. The mighty and violent heavenly thunder light pillar was also shattered. It split into thousands of purple electric arcs and scattered on the solitary cloud peak. The rocky ground, which was already in a mess, was suddenly filled with dense cracks. Hundreds of large pits appeared, and soil and stones burst out into the sky. A moment later, the smoke and dust in the sky dispersed. Only then did everyone see clearly that Yunyao was unscathed. There was nothing unusual within 100 feet of her. However, a layer of the entire mountain peak had been shaved off, and it had dropped by more than 10 feet. Fortunately, the heavenly lightning was destroyed by Yunyao. Otherwise, its power would be even more terrifying. Many of the god's disciples and guards were filled with shock. They had a clearer understanding of the terrifying power of the heavenly lightning. At the same time, everyone was amazed by Yunyao's power and techniques. Just 10 breaths later, the third bolt of heavenly lightning struck. The pitch-black whirlpool of tribulation clouds spat out a 500-foot-long Zidian that looked like a giant dragon. The power of this bolt of heavenly lightning was twice as powerful as before. Before the heavenly lightning struck, heaven and earth were already filled with violent destructive power. Everyone knew that as long as they did not step onto the solitary cloud peak, they would not be hit by the heavenly lightning. However, many people were intimidated by the heavenly lightning and could not help but back away from the solitary cloud peak to avoid being injured. Kaboom! An earth-shattering explosion sounded, and the heavenly lightning struck. Yunyao was still standing proudly in the wind. Her left hand formed a sword seal, and her right hand waved the divine sword. 24 sword lights danced in the wind. Bang 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 bang. Another dull explosion sounded, and the 24 sword lights were released. They were like a few ice flowers that appeared in the dark sky. It was extremely gorgeous. The heavenly thunder light pillar also shattered into tens of thousands of electric arcs, crackling and crackling as they scattered in the sky. Thousands of purple electric arcs and the ice flowers complemented each other, creating a different kind of gorgeous scene. At this moment, the crowd did not feel that the heavenly lightning was terrifying. They were all amazed by the rare beauty. The third bolt of heavenly lightning was also destroyed by Yunyao. Granny Long, many of the god's disciples, attendants, and guards were all excited and full of shock. Waves of exclamations and discussions could be heard from the crowd. This is unbelievable. Senior Yunyao actually destroyed 3 bolts of heavenly lightning in a row. This is simply shocking. In the past 1,000 years, who could accomplish such an amazing feat? After this news spreads, Senior Sister's name will definitely spread throughout the entire Shenwu continent. Although Senior Sister has the divine sword in her hand, how much power she can unleash depends on her talent and strength. It's already a miracle that she was able to destroy 3 bolts of heavenly lightning in a row. If it was an ordinary person, they would have succeeded in their tribulation after the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. Yunyao is a peerless genius. Her tribulation is definitely different. How can there only be 3 bolts of heavenly lightning? Granny Long and the attendants had a new understanding of Yunyao's talent and strength. The god's disciples admired and envied Yunyao. They hoped that they could be like her, facing the tribulation head-on and destroying the heavenly lightning with their swords. Everyone was immersed in shock and amazement. Only Ji Tianqing's expression became serious. He stared at the tribulation cloud vortex with a tinge of worry in his eyes. He knew very well that the first 3 bolts of heavenly lightning would not be a threat to Yunyao. However, the following bolts of heavenly lightning would be much more powerful and unpredictable. Sure enough, thousands of golden, purple, and blue electric arcs appeared in the dark tribulation cloud vortex and quickly gathered together. In the blink of an eye, the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning of different colors gathered together to form a dazzling pillar of heavenly lightning. This pillar of heavenly lightning was different from the previous 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. Not only was it more than 600 feet long, but it also contained 3 different types of power. The purple heavenly lightning had the power to destroy heaven and earth. The golden heavenly lightning was the fiercest and could destroy all kinds of defenses. As for the blue heavenly lightning, it could penetrate the body and destroy the divine soul directly. Yunyao held the upstream sword in her hand and looked up at the heavenly lightning that was descending from the sky. A tinge of seriousness flashed past her eyes. The terrifying and invisible power pressed down on her like a huge mountain, causing her feet to sink into a millstone. It was almost impossible for her to move. However, she tried her best to hold on and maintain her proud posture. She refused to bend down and lower her head. She knew very well that the heavenly lightning could not be destroyed. She could only use all her strength to resist it. Hence, she held the upstream sword with both hands and raised it above her head. Then, she brandished the sword and shot out 36 rays of icy sword light. Chapter 1747. As Yunyao chanted an obscure incantation, her body also burst out with a soaring fighting spirit. 36 cold sword radiances formed a mysterious array and started to spin rapidly. Suddenly, the sword radiances formed a round plate and the cold light lit up the sky. The lone cloud peak and the surrounding area turned into a world of blue light. The 3-colored thunderbolt hit the ice blue plate and made a deafening sound. The disc collapsed on the spot, exploding into millions of ice shards that shot out in all directions. Swish! 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 Countless ice shards flew across the sky like sword chi and shooting stars. At the same time, the tricolored thunderbolt also exploded, turning into multicolored thunderbolts and lightning. It was like a fairy scattering flowers. Yunyao successfully blocked the thunderbolt and wasn't hurt. However, the top of the lone cloud peak was shattered by the thunderbolts and turned into ruins. Dust, gravel, ice crystal fragments, and lightning arcs spread out like a huge wave. The expressions of the gods' disciples, deacons, and guards changed as they stepped back in fear. However, they were too slow and couldn't dodge the impact. At the critical moment, Granny Long leisurely waved her palms, releasing a bright golden light. Swish! The golden light stretched across the sky, forming a tall wall over 10,000 feet in length, blocking the terrifying shockwaves. She had seen this kind of thing many times in the past few hundred years and could deal with it easily. Many of the gods' disciples and guards were still in a state of shock. They all retreated to the sky 40 miles away. Soon, the 5th thunderbolt was formed in the tribulation cloud. There were 4 colors in this thunderbolt and it contained the power of 4 different elements. Its power was even more terrifying. Boom! Crack! A deafening explosion rang out as a 70-meter-long pillar of lightning ferociously struck towards Yunyao with a dazzling light. The terrifying power made it difficult for her to breathe and her body was a bit bent. However, she channeled the longevity divine power in her body and struck out with her left palm in a mysterious trajectory. She executed a defensive mystic art and formed a dark green barrier around her. She waved the water-reversing divine sword with her right hand and shot out dozens of icy blue sword radiances. They formed an icy blue dragon and attacked the thunderbolt. Bam! The icy blue dragon collided with the heavenly thunderbolt and there was a loud sound. The giant dragon instantly collapsed, exploding into countless fragments that splashed across the sky. The heavenly thunderbolt wasn't destroyed, but its power was reduced by a bit before it hit the dark green light shield. Boom! Crack! The dark green light shield and the thunderbolt collapsed at the same time and turned into pieces and thunderbolts that scattered in the sky. The 5th thunderbolt was neutralized by Yunyao again. The process was scary but not dangerous, and the effect was also quite brilliant. The onlookers were shocked and they became more and more excited. Yunyao didn't look relaxed and she didn't even have time to look at the onlookers' reactions. She forgot everything and focused on dealing with the heavenly tribulation. Not long after, the sixth bolt of lightning struck again. This thunderbolt was 800 feet long and formed by 5 colored thunderbolts. Its power was extremely terrifying. Before the thunderbolt struck, the entire lonely cloud peak trembled from the suppression. The area within 20 miles became a vacuum. Yunyao bent over and her face became paler. Her legs were also stuck in the millstone and she couldn't move. However, she activated her Dharma power and used a secret technique to resist the thunderbolt. 3,000 weak water. She let out a low cry and formed a hand seal with both hands. She struck out dozens of hand seals as fast as lightning. She had used one of her trump cards. This was a secret technique that Luoshui martial god had modified for her. It was used with the water-reversing divine sword and could maximize the power of the sword. She had just mastered it 2 days ago and this was the first time she used it. Swoosh! The water-reversing divine sword flew into the sky and instantly expanded to 1,000 feet long, turning into an icy blue giant sword. Under Yunyao's control, the divine sword spun at an extremely fast speed, spraying out an overwhelming amount of icy blue water light. An icy blue light shield with a radius of 1,000 feet was immediately formed and enveloped Yunyao within it. Kaboom! The 5-colored thunderbolt struck the icy blue light shield and made a deafening sound. The thunderbolt pillar collapsed and turned into 5-colored thunderbolts. They scattered in the sky like a huge electric net. The icy blue light shield also shook violently and cracks appeared. It was on the verge of collapse. The light shield was damaged and Yunyao also suffered a backlash. Her face turned pale and she spat out a mouthful of blood. She couldn't help but bend over and cover her chest with her hands. Blood kept dripping from the corner of her mouth. Seeing this scene, everyone cried out in alarm and revealed worried expressions. Ji Tianqing's expression was solemn as well. His eyes were filled with worry. However, he didn't say anything. He didn't want to distract Yunyao. Grandma Long looked at Yunyao. While she was worried, she also felt gratified. Although Yunyao is injured, she successfully blocked the 6th thunderbolt. She should be able to survive this heavenly tribulation. Others might not know, but she knew very well that a cultivator who could attract 6 thunderbolts was already an outstanding genius. With Yunyao's talent, the 7th thunderbolt was bound to strike. Yunyao could block 6 thunderbolts and could block the 7th. At most, she would be severely injured. If it were an ordinary cultivator, they would be severely injured and close to death after enduring 6 thunderbolts. At this moment, the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky spun faster and changed. Inside the pitch-black vortex, crimson heavenly fire and golden astral winds appeared. The heavenly flames, wind, and 5-colored thunderbolts combined to form a dazzling 5-colored thunderbolt pillar hundreds of feet long. Grandma Long's face turned serious when she saw this. She clenched her fists in her sleeves. Yunyao's 7th thunderbolt contains both heavenly flames and wind. Her talent is indeed rare. She's a peerless genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. Everyone also realized that the 7th thunderbolt's power would be unprecedentedly terrifying. Their hearts were in their throats. On solitary Cloud Peak, Yunyao knelt on the ground with one knee under the terrifying suppressive force. She held the reverse water sword with both hands and stood up stubbornly. She looked up at the sky. When the thunderbolt came crashing down, she gritted her teeth and activated her eternal life divine power. She waved the reverse water sword and used her most powerful technique. Heavenly water sword, separate the world. Her voice was sonorous as she shouted. Next, the divine longevity light shot out from her left palm to form a dark cyan umbrella to protect her. She used her right hand to control the reverse water sword and slashed out a giant icy blue sword that was thousands of feet long. The sword radiance suddenly appeared, standing between the sky and the earth. With an unparalleled momentum, it slashed at the 1,000-foot-long heavenly lightning. Chapter 1748. When Yunyao swung her sword, everyone was shocked. They couldn't believe that she had cut open the sky with her sword and created a crack in the void. The sky above Solitary Cloud Peak was really split into two halves by her sword, separating it into two worlds. She had cut off the world with her sword. How terrifying! Only a martial saint would be able to unleash such terrifying power. In the next moment, the giant sword hit the heavenly lightning. Bam! There was a loud explosion and the sound shook the world. The 100-meter-long heavenly thunder was shattered into thousands of five-colored shards, sprinkling down the heavenly fire that covered the sky and earth. However, even though the heavenly lightning was smashed, the golden wind still carried the heavenly fire and the five-colored lightning toward Yunyao. Boom! 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 The dark green umbrella was hit by thousands of attacks and made a series of explosions. Although the longevity divine light was powerful, it couldn't withstand such terrifying heavenly might. After 2 breaths, the dark green umbrella was smashed into pieces. The strong wind, the heavenly fire and the five-colored lightning immediately engulfed Yunyao and the entire Solitary Cloud Peak. Seeing this, Granny Long, Ji Tianqing and everyone else opened their eyes wide and their hearts stopped beating. Everyone was silent. After a moment of silence, they came back to their senses and shouted in surprise and worry. "Oh my God! Senior sister, she couldn't block it. Impossible. Senior sister blocked the 6th heavenly lightning easily. How could she not block the 7th one? Oh no. Senior sister will be seriously injured even if she doesn't die. What a terrifying heavenly tribulation. If it were any of us, we would have been smashed into ashes." All the gods' disciples and guards were filled with terror. They were extremely fearful of the heavenly tribulation. Yao Yao. Ji Tianqing's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, and his fists were clenched so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. He subconsciously rushed out, wanting to rush up to Solitary Cloud Peak and save Yunyao himself. However, when he was about to rush out, his shoulder was grabbed by an old hand. An unparalleled power came, firmly holding him in place, making him unable to move. He turned his head and saw that it was Granny Long. Granny Long looked at him solemnly, shook her head and said in a deep voice, "Tianqing, don't be impulsive. We have to believe in Yunyao." Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment before he calmed down and suppressed the anxiety and worry in his heart. After all, if he rushed up Solitary Cloud Peak, not only would he not be able to help Yunyao, but he would also anger the will of the heavenly Tao and send down a punishment that could destroy the world. He stood where he was, gazing at the chaotic Solitary Cloud Peak, praying silently in his heart. Around 10 breaths later, the lightning, fire, and wind gradually dissipated. The smoke and dust on Solitary Cloud Peak gradually dissipated. Only then did everyone clearly see that the peak of Solitary Cloud Peak had been shaved off by several tens of feet. The ground was covered with huge gullies and pits, and countless charred stones were scattered everywhere. Yunyao, dressed in a white dress, was kneeling in the ruins with one hand on the ground and the other on the reverse water sword. There was a dark red bloodstain on her pure white dress. Her long hair was messily draped over her shoulders, covering her cheeks. Blood kept dripping from the corner of her mouth, falling on the charred stones. Seeing that Yunyao was not killed by the lightning and her body was intact, everyone was finally relieved. "That's great. Eldest senior sister really blocked that bolt of heavenly lightning. I knew it. How could she fail? Ha! Eldest senior sister has successfully passed the tribulation. She will soon break through the tribulation stage and become a new martial lord. She is indeed a top genius, the Divine Master's most valued goddess. She deserves the title. Today's tribulation is rarely seen even in hundreds of years. It is really a blessing for us to be able to witness it with our own eyes. Many God's disciples and guards cheered with joy. They were excited for Yunyao. Even Ji Tianqing heaved a sigh of relief. The heavy stone in his heart was finally lifted. However, no one noticed. Yunyao was half kneeling on the ground. There was no expression of pain on her face. Instead, there was confusion between her eyebrows. She closed her eyes and silently checked the situation in her body, as if she was trying to solve some mystery. Just a moment ago, the heavenly wind, heavenly fire, and lightning drowned her like a flood. She was prepared to be seriously injured. After she was injured, she would use the immortal divine power to heal her injuries. However, she did not expect that after the violent heavenly fire, heavenly wind, and lightning hit her, they would be completely devoured by something or some kind of power in her body. Most of the power of the lightning was neutralized by the mysterious thing. She was only slightly injured. She still had about 70% of her strength. Strange. What kind of power can devour the lightning, heavenly fire, and heavenly wind? Could it be the immortal divine pearl? Yunyao checked for a while but could not find the reason. She thought it was the effect of the immortal divine power. At this moment, among the crowd of onlookers, there was a sudden exclamation full of doubt. Didn't eldest senior sister pass the tribulation? Why hasn't the tribulation cloud dissipated yet? The sudden exclamation made the excited crowd calm down immediately. They all looked up at the sky. They saw that the whirlpool in the tribulation cloud did not dissipate. Instead, it became bigger. The dark tribulation cloud was dyed with a layer of strange blood red. The lightning flashing in the whirlpool was also covered with a layer of blood red. This scene made Granny Long, Ji Tianqing, and the others worried and anxious. Damn it! Is there an eighth lightning bolt? Ji Tianqing cursed worriedly. Granny Long's pupils contracted. She was worried and surprised at the same time. Yunyao attracted the eighth lightning bolt. It has been 800 years since someone with such talent appeared. No wonder the Divine Master treats Yunyao as his own daughter. With Yunyao's talent, she will definitely become an Einherjar in the future as long as she doesn't die prematurely. However, the more talented she is, the more powerful the lightning bolts are. The deacons and disciples of God were shocked by Granny Long's words. Only now did everyone understand what kind of valiant degree Yunyao's talent and aptitude had reached. However, when they heard Granny Long's last sentence, they were worried about Yunyao again. Ji Tianqing looked up at the blood-red tribulation cloud and the lightning. He frowned and asked in a low voice, "Granny Long, you are very knowledgeable and experienced. Can you tell what kind of lightning this is?" Granny Long stared at the tribulation cloud and observed it for a while. She shook her head helplessly and said, "I have seen more than 100 heavenly tribulations. I know them very well. However, I can't see through Yunyao's heavenly tribulation. She is not an ordinary person. I am afraid that the eighth lightning bolt she attracted is a mutated lightning tribulation." What? A mutated lightning tribulation? Ji Tianqing frowned even harder. Granny Long nodded slightly and explained in a low voice, "The mutated lightning tribulation only exists in legends. I have never seen it with my own eyes." Chapter 1749. What? The heavens arranged this for her? Ji Tianqing was dumbfounded. He could not believe it. If someone else had said this, he would have thought it was ridiculous. However, since it came from Granny Long, he had to believe it. Why would the heavens arrange such a strange lightning tribulation for Yao Yao? He furrowed his brows and muttered to himself. Suddenly, he thought of Yunyao's identity and guessed something. Is it because Yao Yao is the reincarnation of goddess Yaoguang? Is that why she has to face such a tribulation? This was just his guess. He could not confirm it yet. At this moment, the eighth lightning tribulation had formed in the tribulation cloud vortex. It was a lightning tribulation that was hundreds of feet long. It looked like a blood-red dragon, and it fell from the sky toward Yunyao. Boom! Crack! A deafening boom shook the heavens, shaking the entire Luotian mountain. Many of the god's disciples and guards turned pale from the shock and felt dizzy. Granny Long and Ji Tianqing were not affected at all. They stared at Yunyao. Yunyao had already used her longevity divine power to heal her injuries. She stood on the peak of the mountain. She used the longevity divine light with her left hand and the water reversal divine sword with her right hand. She was going to use her trump card, however, a scene that shocked everyone appeared. Before Yunyao could use her trump card, the blood-red lightning tribulation struck her at an unbelievable speed and drowned her. Boom! There was a deafening sound. Yunyao was covered by the blood-red lightning tribulation. She could not be seen at all. The lone cloud peak shook violently. However, it did not collapse. There was no dust or gravel. The blood-red lightning tribulation disappeared in the blink of an eye. No. It did not disappear. It went into Yunyao's body. Yunyao was still in the posture of wielding her sword and casting spells. However, she was rooted to the ground like a stone statue. She did not move at all. Such a bizarre scene left everyone dumbfounded. Not only the god's disciples, deacons, and guards, but even Grandma Long was staring at Yunyao with her eyes wide open. Ji Tianqing also showed a puzzled expression and frowned doubtfully. He stared at Yunyao, observing her condition and sensing her aura. Fortunately, Yunyao was not injured, and her life force and magic power aura were normal. Other than being rooted to the ground like a wooden puppet, she didn't seem to be affected at all. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then a burst of discussion broke out. How could this be? Why isn't she moving? Shouldn't the eighth bolt of heavenly lightning destroy the world? How come it didn't even break a single stone? This is too strange. That bolt of heavenly lightning just now was extremely terrifying. I even thought that the solitary cloud summit had been destroyed. I think there's something strange about this heavenly lightning. I'm afraid Yunyao won't be able to neutralize it so easily. That's right. The eighth heavenly lightning should be the final test of the heavenly tribulation. It can't be weaker than the seventh heavenly lightning. Everyone was whispering to each other. There were many different opinions, but no one could figure out what was wrong. Grandma Long frowned and pondered for a long time. Suddenly, she thought of something, and her eyes lit up. I understand now. This is not an ordinary heavenly tribulation. This is the inner demon tribulation of the mutated heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianqing had been pondering the whole time, but when he heard Granny Long's words, a look of realization appeared on his face. Inner demon tribulation. Yes, Yao Yao's situation is very similar to the legendary inner demon tribulation. Grandma Long looked at him in surprise. Tianqing, you've heard of the inner demon tribulation too? Yes. Ji Tianqing nodded and explained, the inner demon tribulation only exists in legends. It is said that it's a test given by the heavens to extraordinary talents. Heaven-defying geniuses could ignore all obstacles and advance at a terrifying speed. Nothing could stop them. The only opponent for such talents is themselves. Or rather, their inner demons. Only by defeating their own inner demons can they be called extraordinary talents. When Ji Tianqing explained the inner demon tribulation, the sky was quiet, and everyone listened attentively. After he finished, Grandma Long quickly nodded in agreement. That's right. Tianqing's explanation is completely correct. Therefore, the inner demon tribulation is the most powerful, most terrifying, and most unpredictable. No external force can defeat it, and no one can help Yunyao. Only by relying on her own willpower and spirit can she defeat the inner demon tribulation. Ji Tianqing added in a low voice with a solemn expression. If Yunyao fails to pass the tribulation, her divine soul will be destroyed by the inner demon tribulation. Even if her physical body survives, it is equivalent to death. If she can successfully pass the inner demon tribulation, she will be reborn. She will spread her wings and soar into the sky. No power can stop her from rising. After he finished speaking, he looked at Guyun Peak with a burning gaze and fixed his gaze on Yunyao. Yao Yao, nothing must happen to you. No matter what, you must pass this tribulation. He secretly clenched his fists and shouted silently in his heart. At the same time, Yunyao, who had been motionless, could finally move. She closed her eyes as if she had lost consciousness. She staggered and ran, waving the reverse water divine sword wildly and stabbing at the sky. Although she was as fast as lightning, she kept circling around Gu Yunfeng and never left the mountain peak. Sometimes she waved her palm to cast spells, sometimes she waved her sword to kill. Not long after, she muttered something and shouted in grief and indignation. No. Don't even think about it. Even if I die, I will never give in. Even if the sun and moon are destroyed, and heaven and earth no longer exist, my heart will still be there. At first glance, she looked like she had lost her mind and gone crazy. But everyone knew that this was not her intention. She was resisting the most dangerous and rare inner demon tribulation. Ji Tianqing and Grandma Long were extremely worried when they saw Yunyao's disheveled hair and uncontrollable emotions. Fortunately, Yunyao gradually calmed down after 100 breaths of time. She stabbed the reverse water divine sword into the ground, formed a hand seal, and sat down cross-legged. Then, a dazzling golden light surged from her body, and her aura became holy and solemn. An illusory figure of a goddess that was 300 meters tall and formed from golden light appeared behind her. Half of the golden projection was dyed red by the blood-red light. The holy golden light and the strange blood-red light were in a stalemate. The two were devouring and resisting each other. Sometimes one was strong and the other was weak, and sometimes one was weak and the other was strong. Although no one knew what was going on, they could guess that Yunyao was resisting the inner demon tribulation and had reached the most critical juncture. Everyone held their breaths and stared at Yunyao without blinking, hoping that she would succeed. Unknowingly, a quarter of an hour passed. The holy golden light slowly gained the upper hand and dispersed all the blood-red light. When the projection of the goddess turned pure gold and no longer had any blood-red light, the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky finally dissipated. Without a doubt, Yunyao had successfully resolved the inner demon tribulation. Chapter 1750. The shadow of the goddess behind Yunyao slowly retracted into her body. Swoosh! After the whirlpool of tribulation clouds in the sky dissipated, it turned into colorful flowing lights that covered the sky and earth, pouring down like a tide. Yunyao sat upright on the ground. Her expression was calm and serene as she circulated her energy and devoured the five-colored brilliance. That was a powerful and sacred divine light. After successfully passing the heavenly tribulation, she would definitely receive rewards and feedback. Yunyao bathed in the colorful divine light. The blood stains on her body quickly disappeared, and her injuries healed quickly. Her strength was also skyrocketing. She broke through the primordial soul stage and reached the first stage of the tribulation stage. Only after an entire hour did the five-colored divine light disappear, completely refined by her. The sky became calm and clear again. The blue sky and the golden sun reappeared. Yunyao finished her cultivation and stood up slowly. She stood at the top of solitary Cloud Peak. At that moment, her white clothes and long hair were as white as snow. Her body was dyed with a layer of gold by the morning sun. She was as sacred and majestic as a goddess. A majestic aura was emitted from her body and lingered in the sky. The god's disciples and guards standing in the sky felt an invisible pressure. They could not help but be in awe. Without a doubt, Yunyao had reached the tribulation stage and was qualified to be called a martial lord. Granny Long revealed a gratified smile and said excitedly, "That's great. Yunyao has finally passed the heavenly tribulation and reached the tribulation stage. Moreover, she is the only peerless genius who has passed 8 heavenly tribulations in the past 1,000 years. Now that she has reached the first stage of the tribulation stage, her strength and foundation are comparable to those of the 3rd or 4th stage of the tribulation stage. Her future is limitless." The deacons nodded in agreement. They were relieved. Many gods' disciples and guards were envious and amazed. They admired Yunyao very much. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky and looked at Yunyao with a smile. His eyes were filled with relief. At this moment, Yunyao stepped into the sky and left solitary Cloud Peak. She flew towards the crowd. She flew straight to Ji Tianqing and stood in front of him. Ji Tianqing smiled and asked, "Yao Yao, how are you feeling now? Have you recovered from your injuries?" Yunyao nodded slightly and said, "I'm fine now. After successfully passing the tribulation, the divine light from the heavens will heal most of my injuries." Granny Long and a few deacons flew over and asked her about her situation. A few disciples of God also gathered around and congratulated her. Yunyao exchanged a few pleasantries with everyone before leaving with Ji Tianqing and returning to Cloud Water Palace. Granny Long didn't stay any longer and hurried back to her residence to report the news to martial god Luo Shui. Only the deacons, guards, and disciples of God refused to leave. They stayed around a solitary Cloud Peak and discussed excitedly. Cloud Water Palace, in an elegant and cozy room. Yunyao and Ji Tianqing were sitting at the table and talking in low voices. "Yao Yao, was the 8th lightning tribulation you just experienced the legendary inner demon tribulation?" Ji Tianqing looked at Yunyao with concern. Yunyao nodded and said, "That's right. It was the inner demon tribulation." Ji Tianqing thought for a while and asked, "What was the inner demon tribulation like? How did you resolve it?" "My inner demon tribulation." Yunyao frowned slightly. After thinking for a while, she shook her head and said, "The process was very complicated and messy. I can't explain it in a few words. However, the 2 most important points in the inner demon tribulation are the demons and goddess Yaoguang." Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, "What do you mean?" Yunyao explained, "I inherited goddess Yaoguang's divine Tao inheritance. No matter if it's goddess Yaoguang or me, we have a blood feud with the demons. In the illusory realm of the inner demon tribulation, I saw countless scenes of the Devil Clan and fought countless battles with Devil Clan experts. I also awakened some of goddess Yaoguang's memories and saw the ancient divine battle. I even saw the future where we work together to deal with the ancestor fiend god." "I see." Ji Tianqing showed a look of realization. He nodded and asked, "What was the result?" Yunyao's face darkened and her eyes dimmed. She said, "It was a narrow escape." Ji Tianqing fell silent. His eyes, which were full of anticipation, also dimmed. After a while, he shook his head and said, "Don't worry. That's just the future you saw in the inner demon tribulation. Maybe it's also a test from the heavens. The real future is full of unknowns. It's hard to predict. No one can determine the result. I believe that as long as we work hard enough, grow fast enough, and become strong enough, we will have the chance to kill the ancestor fiend god in the future." Yunyao nodded and said, "Yes, I understand." Ji Tianqing continued, "All right, Yao Yao, you should rest for 2 days. When your condition stabilizes, we will set off for the Mountain of Flames." Yunyao responded. She got up and walked into the secret room to adjust her breathing. She had just reached the tribulation realm and needed to cultivate for 2 days to consolidate her martial arts realm. Ji Tianqing was not idle either. He made preparations for the trip to the Mountain of Flames and then meditated. Early in the morning 2 days later, Ji Tianqing was meditating and adjusting his breathing. Suddenly, a guard came to report that a young man and woman were asking for an audience. The two people claimed to be Ji Tianqing's servants, named Ji Bai and Shohei. Hearing this news, Ji Tianqing hurriedly asked the guard to let them in. Not long after, Ji Bai and Shohei entered the Cloud Water Palace and came to the room for an audience. Ji Bai greets Master. Shohei greets Master. Ji Bai and Shohei stood side by side in the room and bowed respectfully to Ji Tianqing. No need for formalities. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and looked at the two of them. He found that they were travel-worn and there was a hint of worry and tiredness between their brows. Moreover, their auras were a little chaotic and there was blood aura on their bodies. It was obvious that they had been injured. Ji Tianqing sensed that the situation was not good, so he asked, Ji Bai, Shohei, why did you return to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain for more than 2 months? Looking at your complexions, you seem to have suffered heavy injuries. What the hell is going on? Ji Bai cupped his hands and was about to explain. However, Shohei took a step forward and said in front of him, Master, we did encounter some trouble when we returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain this time, but we easily resolved it. We came back late and made Master worry. Please punish us. Ji Tianqing understood their temperament. He knew that as a woman, Shohei was more meticulous. Ji Bai had always been cold and his thoughts were simple. He guessed that Shohei was hiding something, so he asked in a dignified tone, Shohei, you don't have to hide it from me. I have already detected that not only do you have blood aura, you also have devil aura. Tell me the truth, did you fight with the devil clan? This. Shohei was seen through by Ji Tianqing and was immediately embarrassed, not knowing how to answer. Ji Tianqing did not ask her and his gaze fell on Ji Bai. Chapter 1751. Ji Bai had never lied, especially to Ji Tianqing. This was his nature, he would rather not open his mouth and not speak nonsense. After a long silence, he cupped his hands towards Ji Tianqing and explained, reporting to Master, Shohei did not intend to hide anything, I just did not want you to worry. Of course I understand. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a deep voice, I just want to know what happened. Ji Bai thought for a moment and replied, Master's guess is correct, we have indeed encountered trouble, and the other party is indeed a demon. After all, Tianzhu Mountain is in the north of Tianzhue Kingdom, adjacent to the 3 divine kingdoms in Dark North Mountain. The demons of Dark North Mountain are different from before, they are no longer low-key and have become unusually active recently. Granny Long had already revealed similar information before, so Ji Tianqing had already understood the situation. Hearing Ji Bai's answer, he was not surprised and continued to ask, did you two have a conflict with the demons, or did the demons take action against Tianzhu Mountain? Ji Bai and Shohei were startled for a moment, and their eyes flashed with a strange light. Obviously, the two of them did not expect Ji Tianqing's intuition to be so sharp that he could see through the details with a single glance. Shohei quickly explained, Master, please do not worry about this matter, Tianzhu Mountain can handle it. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a solemn expression, so, I guessed right, the demons really did make a move against Tianzhu Mountain. Ji Bai added, it's just a small-scale harassment, Master does not need to take it to heart. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and did not say anything. Even if Tianzhu Mountain was attacked by the demons, he could not help now. His top priority was to rush to Blazing Mountain as soon as possible to gather materials to repair the divine sword. After a moment of silence, he said in a deep voice, ever since the ancestral devil god came to Shenwu continent, the demons of Dark North Mountain have a leader and have become even more rampant. Dark North Mountain has been dormant for tens of thousands of years, and they are strong enough to wait for their ancestral devil god to appear. Looking at the current situation, the demon's ambition is difficult to contain, and I am afraid that they will bring chaos to the world. However, with our current situation, it is not suitable for us to confront the demons head-on. Ji Bai and Shohei both nodded in agreement. Master is wise. The Great Immortal said the same thing. Great Immortal, you've always reminded us that we've waited for 1,000 years, and we've endured it. Now that Master has appeared, all the more we can't be anxious. We must be even more calm and careful. Ji Tianqing nodded and ordered, Ji Bai, Shohei, you two go into the sword world first and focus on recuperating. I have important matters to attend to and will be leaving the Luotian mountain in a few days to head to the ruins of gods. I'll call you out when I need you. Ji Bai and Shohei cupped their hands in salute at the same time. Then, Ji Tianqing took out the sword of burial of heaven, opened the entrance to the sword world, and put the two of them inside. Not long after, Yunyao also finished her cultivation and walked out of the secret room. After 2 days of rest and recuperation, her mental state and magic power had reached their peak, and her martial arts realm had also been consolidated. She instructed Black Eagle and Golden Dragon before following Ji Tianqing out of the Cloud Water Palace. After the two of them left the Luotian mountain, Ji Tianqing summoned Black Dragon and rode it towards the ruins of gods. Ever since Black Dragon swallowed the divine dragon crystal, it had been cultivating in seclusion for the past few months. Its strength had increased rapidly, and its body had also undergone some changes. Now, it had reached the 7th level of the Essence Soul Realm, and its body was more than 2,000 feet long. However, this was only the initial results, and definitely not the final effect of the Divine Dragon Crystal. The true effect of the Divine Dragon Crystal had yet to be unleashed. Black Dragon still needed a few decades to completely absorb the power of the Divine Dragon Crystal. Unknowingly, a month passed. Black Dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Yunyao and flew across the sky at lightning speed, advancing towards the northwest. In the first half of the month, Black Dragon traveled through the Luoshui Divine Nation. Everything was peaceful, and they didn't encounter any dangers. However, in the next half a month, the group entered the Heaven Extinction Divine Kingdom's territory. This region was the most desolate territory in the Heaven Extinction Divine Kingdom. It was close to the ruins of gods and North Underworld Mountain, so the environment was dangerous. As Black Dragon traveled, it often encountered danger. For example, there were attacks from powerful Fey beasts, as well as groups of adventure teams attacking it. The Fey beasts that lurked in the mountains and rivers were powerful Fey beasts at the Tribulation Transcendence Realm as long as they could occupy an area and declare themselves overlords. When they sensed Black Dragon's aura, they were like hungry wolves that had seen a lamb. They only wanted to pounce on it and devour it clean. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao could easily deal with these Tribulation Transcendence Realm Fey beasts. They could either kill them or repel them. What troubled Ji Tianqing and Yunyao the most were the adventurer teams that licked blood and committed all sorts of evil. These adventurer teams were formed by warriors at the Essence Soul Realm and above. There were at most dozens of them, and at least a dozen. The leaders of these adventurer teams were often at the Tribulation Transcendence Realm. To put it nicely, these people were called adventurer teams. With rich experience and strength, they explored all kinds of ruins and forbidden areas. In fact, they were a group of desperados who committed all sorts of crimes. In order to plunder resources and wealth, they did not hesitate to rob, kill, and commit arson. On the way to the ruins of gods, Black Dragon encountered two adventurer teams one after another. Without exception, when the two adventurer teams saw Black Dragon and found that there were only Ji Tianqing and Yunyao on its back, they both had evil intentions. In the world of martial arts, divine dragons were unattainable. Only the three martial gods could control them. Flood dragons were more numerous and more common. They were the mounts and pet beasts that countless experts dreamed of. When the warriors of the two adventurer teams saw the legendary Black Dragon, of course, they pounced on it without caring about their own safety, trying to take it for themselves. In order to achieve their goal, the two adventurer teams were unscrupulous. Traps, ambushes, poisons, assassinations, and sieges. They took turns to use all sorts of methods just to kill Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and snatch Black Dragon. However, there was no doubt about the outcome. The first adventurer team had fewer people, only about a dozen warriors. They were basically at the Essence Soul realm, and their leader was at the First Firmament Tribulation Transcendence realm. When dealing with this adventurer team, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao used lightning-fast methods to kill more than a dozen people. The remaining adventurers were scared out of their wits as they fled. As for the second adventurer team, they had more people. There were more than 30 of them, and all of them were elites at the Fourth Firmament Essence Soul realm and above. The leader and the strategist were experts at the Second and Third Firmament Tribulation Transcendence realm. The members of this adventurer team knew how to divide the work and work together. They each had their own duties, and their methods were cunning and changeable. They were very difficult to deal with. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao tangled with this adventurer team for 9 days and 9 nights, traversing 500,000 kilometers. Both sides fought with wits and courage, using all sorts of methods and mystic techniques. Finally, the outcome was decided. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were safe and sound, but Black Dragon was slightly injured. Chapter 1752. More than 40 days later, the Black Dragon left the Heaven's divine nation and entered the ruins of God. The vast and boundless ruins of God was covered with desolate grayish-brown mountain ranges that crisscrossed. The sky was filled with gray clouds and gloomy. The ground was also filled with a withered aura. Once one entered the ruins of God, one would feel depressed and their mood would become even more depressed. After what happened before, the Black Dragon already had experience. Even without Ji Tianqing's reminder, it knew that the ruins of God was extremely dangerous, so it became even more cautious. That evening, the Black Dragon was flying in the dark sky. Ji Tianqing sat on the back of the dragon, holding a map in his hand as he carefully examined it. According to the map, the blazing mountain was in the depths of the ruins of God, more than 2 million miles away from him. With the Black Dragon's flying speed, it would take about half a month to reach. Yun Yao sat beside Ji Tianqing, silently meditating. In the past month or so, her strength had been consolidated and her fighting strength had increased by a lot. After Ji Tianqing kept the map, she also finished her meditation and opened her eyes. She turned her head to look at Ji Tianqing beside her and asked, "Tianqing, how long until we reach the blazing mountain?" Ji Tianqing replied, "If nothing unexpected happens, half a month is enough." Yun Yao nodded and asked again, "Tianqing, we have already left the Luotian mountain for more than 40 days. Logically speaking, you should be about to undergo your tribulation, right?" Ji Tianqing revealed a trace of a smile and said playfully, "That's right. These few days, I often feel that the heavens are sending me a message. My heavenly tribulation will descend in about half a month." Yun Yao frowned and said worriedly, "At that time, wouldn't we be in the blazing mountain?" She thought for a moment and said with a solemn expression, "Tianqing, the blazing mountain is extremely dangerous and is not suitable for you to undergo your tribulation. Accidents will definitely happen. In my opinion, we should find a hidden place so that no one will disturb you when you undergo your tribulation." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "I understand. You don't have to worry. Let's get to the Mountain of Flames first." Seeing that he had a card up his sleeve, Yun Yao felt much more at ease. Soon, half a month had passed. That afternoon, the Black Dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and was about to arrive at the Flaming Mountain. While they were still several hundred miles away, the two of them could already see from high up in the sky that a sea of flames had appeared in the desolate mountain range ahead. It was an area shrouded in scarlet flames. There were several towering mountain ranges, all of which were emitting scarlet light and surrounded by fierce flames. Even from hundreds of miles away, Ji Tianqing could clearly feel the terrifyingly high temperature of the flames. The air was filled with a scorching hot aura, and even traces of dark red fire could be vaguely seen. As expected of the Mountain of Flames. Everything within a few hundred miles is a forbidden zone. Warriors below the primordial soul realm are unable to stay here. Ji Tianqing sighed as he looked at the flaming mountain in front of him. Yun Yao stood side by side with him on the dragon's back. She looked around with a deep gaze and observed the situation. Tianqing, this place has already become a place of trouble. I'm afraid there are several groups of people lurking within 1,000 miles. Oh. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a playful smile, it seems that the news of the appearance of the glazed fire dragon has spread. That's why it has attracted the attention of various experts. He released his divine sense and extended it in all directions, carefully inspecting the sky and the earth. Soon, he discovered that there were indeed traces left behind by martial experts within a few dozen miles of the surrounding area. Yun Yao reminded him again, Tianqing, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, you'd better put away the black dragon. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. It's too eye-catching for us to come on the black dragon. It's probably already attracted the attention of some experts. As he spoke, he took out the sword of burial of heaven and put the black dragon into the sword world. At the same time, he summoned Ji Bai and Shohei and asked them to follow him secretly. After they were ready, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao flew across the sky and rushed towards the flaming mountain. As the two of them quickly approached the flaming mountain, there were several pairs of eyes spying on them in the mountains and rivers within a radius of hundreds of miles. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao arrived near the flaming mountain. The closer they got to the flaming mountain, the thinner the air between heaven and earth, and the more terrifying the temperature became. The two of them stood 50 miles away from the flaming mountain. They stopped in the sky and observed the flaming mountain at a close distance. They saw a few towering mountain ranges that were thousands of feet tall between the mountains. Those mountain ranges crisscrossed and stretched for tens of thousands of miles. They couldn't see the end at a glance. The towering mountain ranges that were thousands of feet tall were very steep and almost straight. The surrounding mountain ranges were grayish-brown and covered with weathered rocks. However, the flaming mountain was different. The mountain was dark red and revealed a faint golden color. The mountain had been burned by the glass heavenly fire. After tens of thousands of years, the impurities had long been removed and it had become as smooth and shiny as a glazed tile. In addition, the mountain contained rich mineral resources. All kinds of mineral veins and gems had been burned and tempered by the glass heavenly fire, which was why they had a faint golden color. Ji Tianqing had no doubt that even a few stones dug out from the flaming mountain were valuable treasures to ordinary cultivators. While he and Yun Yao were observing the flaming mountain, the terrifying high temperature roasted them. There were even wisps of flames floating in the sky that kept flying towards them. Every flame was as thin as a strand of hair, but it contained a sharp and violent aura. He and Yun Yao could only use their dermic powers to form a thin shield on the surface of their bodies to resist the corrosion of the flames and high temperature. At this moment, two figures flew over from afar and headed straight for the flaming mountain. They were two powerhouses, one old and one young. The old man had white hair and a beard, and he wore a purple robe. He held a golden horsetail whisk in his hand and wore a crown with 3 flowers and 7 stars on his head. He had the aura of an otherworldly expert. Following behind the old man was a young man dressed in black martial arts attire. This person's body was tall and sturdy, and his face and aura were quite strong. His eyes were cold and sharp. He carried a black heavy sword that was as wide as a bench, and his movements carried the aura of wind and thunder. He was obviously a powerhouse in the Tribulation Transcendence realm. When they passed by Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing, the two of them paused for a moment. The purple-robed old man tilted his head slightly and sized up Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. He said with a serious expression, "Young man, this is not a place for you to come. Leave quickly." Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and said expressionlessly, "What does it have to do with you where we are going? This flaming mountain is not your territory." The purple-robed old man was stunned for a moment, and a sneer flashed across his eyes. He shook his head and did not speak anymore, as if he could not be bothered to lower himself to Ji Tianqing's level. On the other hand, the young man in black was quite dissatisfied with Ji Tianqing's attitude. He shouted coldly, "Kid, be more polite with your words." Chapter 1753. The young man's tone and expression were somewhat overbearing. The purple-robed elder thought even more highly of himself and was too lazy to waste his breath. Ji Tianqing could not help but sneer. He said indifferently, "I'm not familiar with you. I don't need your kind reminder." Hearing this, the purple-robed elder frowned slightly, revealing a hint of displeasure in his eyes. The young man's expression became colder and colder. He glared at Ji Tianqing with a sharp gaze and shouted angrily, "Brat, you really don't know how to appreciate favors. My martial uncle is the famous bright sword martial lord. It is your fortune that he is willing to remind you." Bright sword martial lord. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows. The young man revealed an arrogant expression. He raised his chin and said, "That's right. Now you know how stupid you are, right? Apologize to my martial uncle immediately. Perhaps my martial uncle will be magnanimous and forgive your ignorant offense." The sneer on Ji Tianqing's face became even more pronounced. He said with a mocking tone, "Hee, what bright sword martial lord? I've never heard of him. You'd better enjoy this so-called blessing for yourself. As for apologizing, don't even think about it. Brat." The young man was ridiculed and became even angrier. He shouted angrily, "I'll give you one last chance. If you don't apologize, you'll have to bear the consequences." As he spoke, he raised his right hand and grabbed the hilt of the heavy sword, as if he was about to draw his sword. "I'd like to see what kind of ability you have to be so arrogant and overbearing." Ji Tianqing did not budge an inch as he looked at him indifferently. A black light flashed in his right hand and the sword of burial of heaven appeared. Seeing this, the two of them seemed to be at loggerheads and were about to attack at any moment. The young man was already riding a tiger and could not back down. He could not stop because of his face. At this moment, Bright Sword Martial Lord raised his hand and said expressionlessly, "Qin Yu, don't be presumptuous, lest you delay the proper business." The young man named Qin Yu furrowed his brows and said unwillingly, "Martial uncle, but this kid is too arrogant." Honorable Sword Martial Lord said without changing his expression, "Some young people don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, so how can we lower ourselves to their level? Isn't that a disgrace to this monarch's status? People who don't know what's good for them will be taught a lesson sooner or later." Qin Yu let go of the sword hilt and withdrew his right hand. He cupped his hands and said, "Martial uncle is right, Qin Yu will remember." Finished speaking, he fiercely glared at Ji Tianqing before following Bright Sword Martial Lord and flying away. The two of them flew across the sky at lightning speed. Soon, they entered the flaming mountain and disappeared. Yun Yao frowned and said in an indifferent tone, "There are always some self-righteous people who take advantage of their seniority and want to teach others. They even think that they have noble character and unquestionable integrity. What a joke." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Yes, there are nosy people everywhere." Finished speaking, he pondered for a moment, then analyzed, although that honorable sword martial lord is annoying, he's still considered a righteous martial artist of the profound sect. The reason why he stopped Qin Yu is probably because he's in a hurry to enter the flaming mountain to deal with some important matter. It's very likely that it's related to the glazed fire dragon. Yun Yao nodded slightly and added, "There's another reason. There are too many people here, and there are also a few groups of experts hiding in the dark. Honorable Sword Martial Lord doesn't want to cause too much trouble. Let's go, let's also enter the flaming mountain to take a look." Ji Tianqing stopped talking about this matter and immediately flew forward. Yun Yao hesitated for a moment, then secretly asked, "Tianqing, are we really going in now? I'm afraid your heavenly tribulation is coming, right?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "It should be in the next 2 days, but I'm not sure which day it will be." "Yao Yao, don't worry. Let's enter the Flaming Mountain and take a look at the situation. It won't be too late to make a decision." As his voice fell, 2 more groups of martial artists appeared in the sky not far away. One of the groups of martial artists had 3 people, all of whom were Tribulation Realm experts. Leading them was an old woman with a head full of white hair. She held a purple jade dragon-headed walking stick and wore a luxurious robe with astral patterns. Behind her were 2 middle-aged men dressed in armor and wielding swords. They were dressed as guards. It was obvious that the 3 of them came from powerful family clans and had extraordinary heritage. They flew across the sky as fast as lightning and flew straight into the Flaming Mountain. Their figures were engulfed by the sea of flames. As for the other group of martial artists, there were 9 of them. They were all middle-aged men with powerful auras. The leader was dressed in red robes and carried a saber on his back. His body emitted a domineering and bloody aura. The other 8 people had strength at the 6th or 7th firmament essence soul realm. Their skills and auras were rather elite. This was clearly an adventurer team. Whoosh! 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 A beam of light flashed as the adventurer team stopped in front of Ji Tianqing. Everyone stared at Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao as they sized them up indifferently. However, everyone only sized up Ji Tianqing before their gazes landed on Yun Yao. They revealed looks of amazement and shock. There were even a few adventurers who had covetous looks in their eyes. However, they quickly concealed it. The leading red-robed man crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled at Ji Tianqing. He said, "Little brother, I'm the leader of the Wild Thunder Adventurer team, Lei Quan. The both of you are so young, yet you dare to explore the ruins of God. Your strength and guts are extraordinary. I admire both of you, so." Without waiting for Lei Quan to finish his sentence, Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "We are not interested in an adventurer team. If you wish to invite us to join, you don't have to say it." Lei Quan choked on the second half of his sentence as the smile on his face froze. The few fierce-looking adventurers immediately revealed their anger as they looked sharply at Ji Tianqing. However, Lei Quan quickly regained his composure and waved his hand at the adventurers behind him. He looked calmly at Ji Tianqing and continued, "Little brother, you are very confident, but do you know where this place is? The famous Flaming Mountain. One of the most dangerous forbidden areas in the ruins of God. Don't blame me for not reminding you. With your strength and adventure experience, do you think you can have designs on the glazed fire dragon? You are definitely courting death." Ji Tianqing glanced at him indifferently and said indifferently, "You don't have to worry about that." Lei Quan frowned and sighed. "Well, to each his own. I won't force you. When you have thought it through, come and find me. The Wild Thunder Adventure team will still accept you." After saying that, Lei Quan led the 8 adventurers away and flew toward the Flaming Mountain. The adventurers were a little angry and secretly asked, "Leader, why are you so good-tempered today? You even called that kid brother." "Boss, that kid is so arrogant. Why don't you let us teach him a lesson? That kid doesn't know what's good for him." "Boss, why did you give him a chance?" Lei Quan grinned and revealed a mocking sneer. He said in a sinister tone, "Humph, what do you know? I'm casting a long line to catch a big fish. When that kid enters the Flaming Mountain, his life will no longer be in his hands." Chapter 1754. After the Wild Thunder adventurers left, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao rushed to the Blazing Mountain. During this time, 2 more groups of Tribulation Realm powerhouses emerged from the mountains and flew towards the Blazing Mountain. These powerhouses all had different appearances, and it was obvious that they came from different parts of the Shenwu continent. However, they all had the same goal, the glazed fire dragon in the Blazing Mountain. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao flew towards the Blazing Mountain at a leisurely pace. They were not anxious at all. Both of them knew that whether or not they could obtain the glazed fire dragon had nothing to do with the time they entered the blazing mountain. The more impatient a person was, the easier it was for them to make mistakes and suffer losses. Not long after, the two arrived at the edge of the blazing mountain. The air was filled with scorching heat, and layers of scarlet flames with hints of gold rushed towards them like huge waves. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao both used their magic power to form an icy blue shield around their bodies to protect themselves. Under the high temperature and the scarlet flames, the icy blue shield continuously evaporated into a hazy mist, and its defensive power was constantly being weakened. The two of them needed to continuously provide magic power to maintain the shield's integrity and operation. In other words, once the two of them stepped into the blazing mountain, they would continuously consume their magic power. If they did not leave the range of the blazing mountain before their magic power ran out, their lives would be in danger. Yunyao stared at the blazing mountain in front of her and said solemnly, "Tianqing, we saw it with our own eyes. Several groups of powerhouses have already entered the blazing mountain. There must be a large number of powerhouses gathered in the blazing mountain now. We need to be careful and not let our guard down." Ji Tianqing nodded. I understand. The scarlet flames in the periphery of the blazing mountain are not too strong, and the temperature is not too high either. Even a primordial spirit realm powerhouse can last for half a day. Don't use the water reversal sword for now. It's our greatest trump card, and we can only use it at a critical moment. Yunyao naturally understood what he meant and nodded. The two of them then stepped into the scarlet sea of flames and entered the blazing mountain. As soon as they entered the range of the blazing mountain, the two of them were engulfed by the sea of flames, and the surrounding temperature doubled. Violent waves of fire continued to attack, blocking the two of them from advancing. There were also countless wisps of flames that shot out like a rain of arrows, constantly bombarding the two's mana shields. The two of them were in the flaming mountain, and their flying speed was reduced by 40%. As they flew deeper into the mountain range, the two of them lowered their heads and observed their surroundings. Beneath his feet was a towering mountain range that was thousands of feet tall. The mountain was crimson in color and emitted a faint golden light. The mountains and the earth had been scorched for tens of thousands of years, turning into a translucent glaze that contained rich metallic minerals. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and immediately discovered that there were large amounts of metal ores hidden inside the mountain. However, the temperature inside the mountain was even more terrifying. It was also quite difficult to enter the mountain to mine the ores. The fiery mountain covered an area of 1 million miles, and was formed by dozens of magnificent mountain ranges. The terrain was quite complicated. The two of them identified a direction and flew straight into the depths of the mountain range. About an hour later, the two of them had flown a few thousand miles away. At that moment, Ji Tianqing suddenly discovered a group of Essence Soul Realm warriors in the mountain range to his left. They were digging for ores in the mountain. It was a group of adventurers. There were a total of 12 of them, and their leader had the strength of a first firmament tribulation transcendence cultivator. The strength of the 11 adventurers was at the 6th firmament essence soul realm and above. The group of adventurers had excavated a small passageway in the rock wall halfway up the mountain that led straight into the interior of the mountain. 2 adventurers stayed behind to guard the passageway while the rest entered the belly of the mountain. They quickly excavated the ores and plundered the various gems and ores. Ji Tianqing probed and discovered that there were 7 ores of different sizes hidden in the mountain. The ores that the group of adventurers had excavated were the largest fire spirit gold ore, and also the most valuable one. The adventurers were very skilled and appeared to be very experienced. It was obvious at a glance that they often did such things. Ji Tianqing only observed for about 100 seconds before the group of adventurers dug up more than 1,000 ores. They were even lucky enough to dig up 3 fire spirit gold crystals. When Yunyao noticed that he was observing the others excavating, she asked with a voice transmission, "Tianqing, what materials do you lack to repair the divine sword?" Ji Tianqing answered calmly, I'm still lacking 2 materials. Wind lightning meteorite iron and golden crow copper marrow. Yunyao frowned and thought for a moment before persuading, those 2 materials are top refinement materials. They are extremely rare. I wonder if the fiery mountain has them. Let's hope so. Ji Tianqing smiled as he consoled himself. At that moment, the 2 adventurers guarding the passageway's entrance sensed the existence of Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. Seeing that the duo had stayed near the mountain for a long time without any intention of leaving, the 2 adventurers raised their guard and revealed a strong sense of hostility. Ji Tianqing could not be bothered with the 2 adventurers. He did not want to waste time here either. He was about to leave with Yunyao. But at that moment, more than a dozen fire demons that were 100 feet tall and had ferocious appearances suddenly emerged from the mountain's interior. Every fire demon had the strength of a 7th or 8th firmament essence soul. They exuded a violent and evil aura. Their sudden appearance alarmed the 10 adventurers. They stopped excavating the ores and charged at the fire demons with their swords and sabers. The 2 parties began fighting in the mountain. Their battle produced loud rumbling sounds that shook the heavens and earth. The powerful aftershocks of the battle struck the mountain wantonly. They erupted from the passageway, forming a huge 5-colored pillar of light that shot into the sky. What surprised Ji Tianqing was that the mountain was abnormally sturdy. It was like a Dharma treasure that had been tempered thousands of times. More than a dozen adventurers and more than a dozen fire demons exchanged dozens of blows in the belly of the mountain. The mountain shook incessantly, but it did not collapse. About 30 seconds later, the adventurer team suffered heavy casualties. 4 people died on the spot, and 6 were severely injured. Only the first Firmament Tribulation Transcendence adventurer team leader was able to withstand the fire demon's attacks and was not injured. He led the 6 surviving adventurers and rushed out of the passageway as fast as lightning. They flew out without looking back. 9 fire demons chased after them. They roared as they flew across the sky and began their pursuit of the adventurer team. In just a few seconds, the adventurers and the fire demons disappeared in the crimson sea of fire. Upon seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao exchanged glances. Their eyes turned solemn. This is only the periphery of the flaming mountain. There are so many fiendish demons lurking in the mountain. If we enter the depths of the flaming mountain, we will probably encounter even more powerful fiendish demons. It's no wonder those adventurers are all desperados. They walk the line between life and death all day long. They are probably used to it. That's why they treat life so lightly. Chapter 1755. In the next 6 hours, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao flew more than 15,000 kilometers. Along the way, the 2 of them encountered another group of adventurers. The difference was that there were fewer adventurers in this group. There were only 4 of them. The 4 adventurers were all young men and women. Their attire was rather special and memorable. There was a red-haired man who was as strong as an iron tower, a weak young master in a white robe, a hot woman in a leather coat, and a woman in a long dress with a zither on her back. The 4 of them had reached the 2nd stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm and had mastered powerful secret techniques. They cooperated very well. When Ji Tianqing and Yunyao encountered them, the 4 of them were surrounded by more than 20 lava giants. The lava giants hid deep underground. They usually hid in the lava and lived by devouring mineral veins and spiritual fire. They were very tall and burly. Their bodies seemed to be made of rock and metal. Their bodies contained a violent power that could destroy the world. The 4 young adventurers used all their strength and various secret techniques to barely block the lava giants' attacks. However, it was very difficult for them to kill those lava giants. It was almost impossible for them to escape the encirclement. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao observed for a while and realized that the 4 adventurers did not look like ordinary adventurers. They were more like genius disciples of some large factions. Therefore, Ji Tianqing decided to save them after weighing the pros and cons for a while. He and Yunyao worked together, each using a powerful secret skill. With a thunderous momentum, they instantly killed the 4 lava giants. A gap was immediately torn open in the lava giants' encirclement. With their help, the 4 young geniuses desperately broke out of the encirclement and killed a few lava giants together. Only then did they manage to escape. The group did not continue to fight. After breaking out of the encirclement, they left and escaped. Those lava giants had violent power and strong defense, but speed was their weakness. In just 100 breaths of time, the group shook off the dozen lava giants that were chasing after them. The group fled to a 10,000 feet tall glazed mountain and temporarily stopped to rest. Only now did the 4 young experts relax as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. They quickly bowed to Ji Tianqing and Yunyao and thanked them sincerely. The white-robed young man, who was the leader of the group, even took out 2 superior-grade tribulation pills and gave them to Ji Tianqing as a thank-you gift. Ji Tianqing chatted with the other party for a while before he understood the situation of this adventurer team. It turned out that these 4 young geniuses were all from the Heaven End Divine Nation, and they were the elite experts of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance. It was Ji Tianqing's first time hearing about the Broken Heaven Alliance. After asking the white-robed young master, he found out that the Broken Sky Alliance was not under the jurisdiction of any empire. It was an alliance formed by martial Dao experts. At the same time, the Broken Sky Alliance was one of the top 10 martial arts organizations on the Divine Martial Continent. As long as one was a cultivator above the primordial spirit realm, abiding by the rules of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance and acknowledging its ideals, they could apply to join. The Broken Heaven Alliance had over 100,000 members, and they were spread all over the Heaven End Divine Nation. No matter which divine nation, race, or force they were from, as long as they met the requirements, they could join the Broken Sky Alliance. The Broken Sky Alliance treated all members equally, rewarding them based on their contributions and assigning them positions based on their strength and contributions. These 4 young experts were all geniuses with outstanding talent and ambition. Of course, although they looked young, they had actually lived for 200 to 300 years. They wanted to make a name for themselves, so they formed an adventurer team and came to the Flaming Mountain to search for the Golden Lotus of Fire. Every Golden Lotus of Fire was a rare treasure that was hard to come by in 100 years, and they were the best of the best among spirit herbs. If they could find 2 or more Golden Lotuses of Fire, the 4 of them would accumulate a lot of contributions and qualify to run for the position of deacon. After they entered the Flaming Mountain, they tried their best to sneak into the depths of the ground. Unfortunately, they had just entered the underground lava lake, and before they could find the Golden Lotus of Fire, they alerted the lava giant hiding in the lava lake. Of course, what happened next was self-explanatory. After the white-robed young master finished telling the story, a smile of relief appeared on his fair and handsome face. He cupped his fists at Ji Tianqing and said, "Today, if it weren't for the 2 of you, we would have died here. The 4 of us will remember the kindness of our 2 benefactors in our hearts. In the future, if you need anything, please come to the Broken Sky Alliance to find us. I am Li Gan, this is Zhao Guangxiong, and that is junior sister Qingwan." The white-robed young master, Li Gan, introduced his companions to Ji Tianqing. His words and actions were quite graceful. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said calmly, "Young Master Li, you don't need to say any more words of thanks. We still have important matters to attend to, so we will take our leave." Seeing that he was about to leave, Li Gan hurriedly raised his hand and said, "Benefactor, please wait. If I'm not wrong, the 2 of you are going to the depths of the Flaming Mountain to search for the whereabouts of the glazed fire dragon?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and did not comment. Seeing that he did not answer, Li Gan knew what was going on. He cupped his fists and said, "Benefactor, I have to remind you that if you want to snatch the glazed fire dragon, you should give up the idea as soon as possible. I'm not being rude, but the glazed fire dragon is a divine beast and must have reached the martial sage realm. If you go near it rashly, your life will be in danger. Moreover, in the past half a month, dozens of experts have entered the depths of the flaming mountain. Those experts came from all over the continent and they were all at least at the third stage of the crossing tribulation realm. Many of them were famous martial lords. With so many experts trying to snatch the glazed fire dragon, I'm afraid the chances are slim. It's better for you not to take the risk. The woman named Qingwan carried a zither on her back and wore a long dress. She also walked to Li Gan's side and said sincerely, "Benefactors, I just received news yesterday that hundreds of experts have gathered in the depths of the flaming mountain. The glazed fire dragon has been forced to appear several times and every time, it would start a massacre and create a bloody storm. It is said that dozens of crossing tribulation realm experts have been killed." Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao could tell that Li Gan and Qingwan were speaking from the bottom of their hearts. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "Thank you, young Master Li and Miss Qingwan, for your reminder. We know what to do. Goodbye." After that, he and Yun Yao cupped their hands and bowed to the crowd and turned to leave. Li Gan, Qingwan, and the others could not persuade Ji Tianqing anymore. They could only stand there and watch as Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao left. After the two disappeared into the sea of fire, Li Gan and the others retracted their gazes and began to discuss with complicated expressions. "Sigh, those two benefactors are the real young geniuses." As expected, geniuses are proud and arrogant. That young Master Ji has not reached the crossing tribulation realm yet, but his combat strength is stronger than ours. It's incredible. He's a rare genius. In my opinion, those two benefactors have a lot of feelings for each other. They're probably a couple. They're a perfect match and both are so outstanding. I'm so envious. Chapter 1756. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had already left. They didn't know that Li Gan, Qingwan, and the others thought highly of them. At the same time, everyone was worried about them. About 12 hours later, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao flew for 70,000 miles and finally left the outer region of the Mountain of Flames. When they entered the central region, they could clearly feel that the flames between heaven and earth were more violent, and the temperature had almost doubled. In order to maintain the dermic power shield, their dermic powers were consumed at a much faster rate. However, at this moment, Ji Tianqing suddenly stopped flying and landed on a mountain peak that was completely golden in color. Yun Yao followed and asked with concern, "Tianqing, what's wrong? Do you need to stop and rest for a while?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and said with a smile, "Not really. I think I'm about to find what I'm looking for." Yun Yao was stunned for a moment, and then a look of surprise appeared on her face. She asked, "You mean, the material to repair the divine sword?" "That's right." Ji Tianqing nodded and pointed at the mountain under his feet. He said, "Just now, I used my divine sense to check carefully on the way here. Almost every mountain contains a large amount of metal, and there are some ore veins buried underground. Although many of the ore veins are rare and can be mined with valuable ores, I don't want to waste time. I just checked that there are 3 ore veins hidden in the mountain under our feet, and one of them is the Golden Crow Copper Oregon." Yun Yao immediately understood what he meant. Golden Crow Copper ore is rare to begin with. Any piece of ore with high purity can be sold for a sky-high price of 100,000 spirit stones. However, the conditions for the formation of Golden Crow Copper ore are very special, and it grows very slowly. Even a vein that has been growing for thousands of years may only be 1,000 feet long. Only a Golden Crow Copper ore that has been growing for tens of thousands of years can give birth to a piece of Golden Crow Copper marrow. Ji Tianqing revealed a faint smile and nodded. "Absolutely correct. I just checked. The Golden Crow Copper ore in this mountain seems to be more than 10,000 feet long. 3,000 zhang long." Yun Yao blinked her beautiful eyes, revealing an expectant look. It must be an ore vein that has been growing for more than 10,000 years. It has a chance to produce Gold Crow Copper marrow. Let's go in and take a look, Ji Tianqing said as he drew the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand. Seeing that there was no one around, he flew to the mountainside with Yunyao. Then, he found a mountain wall that was closest to the mine and stabbed out a few sword lights with his sword. Pang pang pang. Four dazzling golden sword lights pierced into the faint golden mountain wall. Suddenly, a large hole was pierced through the glass-like mountain wall. The opening was about 20 feet wide and more than 20 feet deep. The two of them entered the deep cave, Ji Tianqing leading the way with his sword in hand. He used his sword skill 3 more times and dug a hole 1,000 feet deep before he entered the belly of the mountain. The belly of the mountain was hollow and filled with caves of various sizes. They were all naturally formed. The gold crow copper ore that Ji Tianqing was looking for was in a huge cave that was 3,000 feet wide. The ground, ceiling, and surrounding walls of the cave were all dark red with a metallic luster. The air was extremely hot. The cave was filled with raging waves of fire that were enough to melt a mortal's soul-level Dharma treasures. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were inside the cave. They had no choice but to channel more magic power to maintain the operation of the shield and resist the burning of the spirit fire. The cave was filled with jagged rocks of strange shapes. The ground was covered with mounds, piles of rocks, and holes. Rows of faint golden stalactites hung upside down from the ceiling of the cave, like a forest of spears. A dark gold ore vein that was more than 3,000 feet long was lying on the ground like a giant dragon. This was the gold crow copper ore that Ji Tianqing was looking for. The ore vein stretched from one end of the cave to the other, passing through the entire cave. They could not see the source of the ore vein, nor could they see the end of the ore vein. They did not know how long it was. Most of the ore vein was buried underground. Only a small part of it was exposed, but it was still 100 feet high. The dark gold ore vein emitted a mysterious and ancient aura. It also had a terrifying temperature that burned people's souls. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao stared at the gold crow copper ore and used their divine senses to examine it carefully. From the situation of this ore vein, it should be more than 10,000 years old. It has been purified by the glass heavenly fire. I just don't know if the ore vein has produced gold crow copper marrow. Yunyao thought for a moment and said, Tianqing, let's search separately. It will save more time. You go north, and I'll go south. Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement. They searched north along the ore vein from the middle of the cave. Yunyao and he had their backs facing each other. They searched south along the ore vein. The cave was silent. The two of them were focused on searching. Soon, 15 minutes passed. The two of them arrived at the two ends of the cave. They were blocked by the rock walls. However, neither of them found the gold crow copper marrow. Ji Tianqing sighed in disappointment. This ore vein is more than 10,000 feet long. More than half of it is buried in the mountain. We can only use a secret technique to drill into the mountain and search. Yunyao comforted him. Don't be discouraged. This ore vein has been growing for 10,000 years. It is very rare on the continent. It is very likely that it has produced the gold crow copper marrow. Although it is a little troublesome, we have plenty of time. We can take it slow. Then, the two of them continued to search separately. The two of them used a secret technique to drill into the rock layer. They searched north and south along the gold crow copper Oregon. The mountain had been burned by the glass heavenly fire for tens of thousands of years. It was as hard as a high-grade nascent soul Dharma treasure. If the two of them used their divine swords to dig a cave along the ore vein, they would have to go through a lot of trouble. It would be a waste of time and energy. However, the two of them used a secret technique to travel through the mountain. Their speed was very slow. It was about the same as an ordinary person walking. Time passed silently. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Ji Tianqing traveled 3,000 feet in the mountain. He had already reached the end of the Gold Crow Copper Oregon. However, he still did not find the Gold Crow Copper Marrow. Therefore, he turned back and went through the cave to meet up with Yunyao. He had just passed through the cave when he received Yunyao's divine perception voice transmission. "Tianxing, come and see. I found it." Yunyao's tone was joyful and a little excited. Ji Tianxing was stunned. He hurriedly drilled into the mountain and used a secret technique to rush over. When he found Yunyao, he saw that Yunyao was guarding a stone hill with a radius of several hundred feet in the rock layer. The Gold Crow Copper ore stopped here. That huge stone hill was obviously the source of the ore vein. Ji Tianxing followed Yunyao's instructions and released his divine perception into the stone hill. He saw that there was a lump of ore that was half black and half gold deep in the dark golden stone hill. The ore was as big as a head. Its surface was diamond-shaped. It emitted a faint black golden light. It looked very mysterious. The metal and power aura it contained far surpassed the entire hill. Chapter 1757. Just as Yunyao had expected, the Golden Crow Copper Marrow was indeed nurtured in this mine. Ji Tianxing was filled with joy and excitement. He hurriedly used the Burial of Heaven to break open the dark gold rock. He spent 15 minutes to dig a hole that was more than 100 feet deep and saw the Golden Crow Copper Marrow. However, the Golden Crow Copper Marrow had fused with the ore and was very difficult to separate. He tried a few times, but he could not use the Burial of Heaven to cut it off. After all, the Burial of Heaven was only a supreme-grade essence soul Dharma treasure. It had not even reached the tribulation level. Seeing this, Yunyao had no choice but to use the Reverse Water Divine Sword and carefully cut the ore. The Reverse Water Divine Sword was a real divine artifact. It was indestructible and unstoppable. After a while, Yunyao cut out the entire Golden Crow Copper Marrow and handed it to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing took the Golden Crow Copper Marrow and felt that it was extremely heavy. The muscles in his arms tightened naturally. Although it was only a small piece of ore crystal, it was as heavy as a 1,000-foot mountain. The energy contained in it was extremely powerful and majestic. I thought that the Golden Crow Copper Marrow was extremely precious and that we would have to go through a lot of trouble to get it. I didn't expect that we would get this material in less than a day after entering the Mountain of Flames. Yao Yao, it seems like this is a good sign. It means that our trip will be very successful. Ji Tianxing said with satisfaction as he held the Golden Crow Copper Marrow in his hands and looked at it. Yunyao also smiled and nodded. I hope everything goes well. Even if we can't get the glazed fire dragon, it would be great if we can gather the materials to repair the divine sword. However, just as she finished speaking, the originally calm rock layer suddenly trembled. Boom! A muffled sound came from the depths of the ground. The two of them frowned and had a bad feeling. What's going on? There seems to be some movement underground. Is there some kind of demon? As he spoke, Ji Tianxing stored the Golden Crow Copper essence into his spatial ring. He held the Sword of Burial of Heaven in his hand and released his divine sense to explore the situation underground. At this moment, Ji Bai and Shou He, who were guarding the cave passage, sent out divine sense transmissions almost at the same time. Master, the situation is not good. Quickly retreat. Master, there seems to be a powerful demonic beast underground. Ji Bai and Shou He had been secretly following and monitoring the situation around them. The two of them would not show themselves unless it was absolutely necessary. Ji Tianxing hurriedly pulled Yunyao along and used an escape technique to rush out of the mountain. Then, the whole mountain started to shake, and a rumbling sound came from underground. As Ji Tianxing fled, his divine sense also detected that there seemed to be a huge earthquake several thousand feet underground. The incomparably hard rock layer seemed to have been struck by a violent force. All of it protruded upwards, twisting and breaking into pieces. A pitch-black claw that was as large as a house reached out from the messy pile of rocks and easily pushed aside the shattered rock layer. The appearance of the giant claw was somewhat similar to a dragon's claw. Its surface was covered with black scales and had pitch-black sharp nails. A moment later, a second giant claw also reached out from the ground. The mountain shook even more violently, and the caves in the belly of the mountain collapsed one after another. A large and sharp black head emerged from the pile of rubble. It was the head of a giant beast, somewhat like a crocodile's head, but more like a pangolin that had been magnified 10,000 times. On the pitch-black head that was covered in scales, there was a pair of dark green eyes that were suffused with an ice-cold light. Its body wriggled a few times, and then it drilled out of the ground. With a forceful push of its two sturdy front claws, it crushed an ore vein into pieces. Its entire body emitted an incomparably ferocious aura as it opened its mouth and roared. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's expression was solemn as he sped up and fled out of the mountain. After a short span of 20 breaths, he and Yunyao finally left the mountain and returned to the sky shrouded in a sea of fire. However, before the two of them could leave, the golden mountain wall behind them exploded with a bang. Half of the mountain wall had cracked, and countless pieces of rubble collapsed. Two gigantic pitch-black claws drilled out of the mountain peak. Immediately after, the mysterious giant beast that was hundreds of feet long and pitch-black all over also rushed out of the mountain. Swoosh! With a flash of black light, the mysterious giant beast pounced in front of Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing pushed Yunyao away without hesitation. An incomparably powerful force enveloped Yunyao and sent her thousands of feet away. At the same time, one of the mysterious giant beast's front claws viciously slapped Ji Tianqing. Bam! Ji Tianqing was sent flying on the spot. His entire body was wrapped in a ball of golden light as he tumbled and crashed into the ground 5 kilometers away. The sudden heavy blow destroyed his dermic power shield and injured his internal organs. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, he took out the Kenshin battle robe in time and transformed it into a pair of wings to protect himself. The golden rock wings blocked most of the power, which allowed him to survive. He flew a full 5 kilometers away before he managed to neutralize the impact. He flapped his wings and flew back into the sky. At this moment, the mysterious giant beast pounced in front of Yunyao again and opened its mouth to spit out a monstrous golden flame. It was the terrifying heavenly glass fire. Seeing that Yunyao was about to be engulfed by the heavenly glass fire, Ji Tianqing's pupils constricted, and his heart was in his throat. Yao Yao, be careful. Fortunately, Yunyao was not flustered in the face of danger. She decisively swung the reverse water divine sword and slashed out 36 icy sword lights. Each sword light was 300 feet long, and the 36 sword lights gathered together to form a mysterious array formation. They formed a gigantic disk and began to spin rapidly. The icy blue disk released an endless amount of icy water and frost energy, which met the golden flames in the sky. Boom, 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 boom. Water and fire were incompatible. The heavenly glass fire and the icy water and frost energy collided, resulting in an earth-shattering explosion. Endless water vapor rose from the sky, but it was quickly evaporated by the sea of flames. The heavenly glass fire that blotted out the sky was also blocked by the icy blue disk and quickly dissipated. Yunyao successfully blocked the mysterious giant beast's attack with the reverse water divine sword. When the icy blue disk dissipated, Ji Tianqing had already flown to her side. Seeing that she was safe and sound, Ji Tianqing was relieved. The two of them stood side by side and faced off against the mysterious giant beast. The mysterious giant beast occupied the shattered mountain peak and looked down at the two of them from above. Its dark green eyes revealed a bloodthirsty glint. Shohei, who was hiding in the dark, used his divine sense to send a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing. Master, this mysterious giant beast should be the legendary Xidagarba divine armor. In ancient times, the underground armored beast was a mutated species born from the combination of the fire dragon and the black tortoise. This kind of Ksitigarbha divine armor is very rare. It lives in the depths of the earth's core and feeds on magma, earth fire, and metal veins. It has the power to control the earth and veins. All kinds of historical records clearly recorded that this kind of Ksitigarbha divine armor was worthy of being the overlord of the earth. Chapter 1758. I knew that the golden crow copper marrow wouldn't be so easy to obtain. Ji Tianqing looked at the Ksitigarbha divine armor and muttered to himself. Yunyao held the water reversal divine sword, her body glowing with icy blue light and strong fighting spirit. Tianqing, this giant beast is too strong, and it has devoured many metal veins. Its defense must be very strong. We shouldn't fight it. After we find a chance to shake it off, we should leave this place as soon as possible to avoid more trouble. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and smiled playfully. He said, this Ksitigarbha divine armor is the legendary ruler of the earth. It has the power to control the earth and veins. If we can capture or subdue it and give it to the earth spirit race as their divine beast, it would be a good choice. The Earth Spirit race had been living in the Sword World with peaceful Earth City as their foundation and developing. The Ksitigarbha divine armor's power and talent were very similar to the Earth Spirit races. That was why Ji Tianqing had this idea. Subdue this Ksitigarbha divine armor. Yunyao tilted her head to look at him, a look of disbelief in her eyes. Tianqing, we don't even know if we can defeat it, much less subdue it. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said, let's fight it first. As he spoke, he held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed at the Ksitigarbha divine armor with a 1,000-foot-long sword light. Sky-shattering sword. The 1,000-foot-long golden sword light contained a wisp of sword intent. Its power and aura had increased. This slash seemed to have the power to tear apart the world as it slashed at the Ksitigarbha divine armor's head. A hint of disdain flashed through the Ksitigarbha divine armor's dark green eyes. It raised its sturdy left front claw and swatted at the giant golden sword with a claw that was wreathed in raging golden flames. Bang! Golden flames splashed in the sky amidst a deafening sound. The Ksitigarbha divine armor was knocked back dozens of feet. The towering mountain beneath it was also on the verge of collapsing. Dense cracks appeared on its surface, and countless pieces of rubble collapsed. The giant golden sword was also smashed to pieces, turning into golden fragments and hurricanes that scattered in all directions. The Ksitigarbha divine armor clearly did not expect the power of Ji Tianqing's swordsmanship to be so powerful. It had suffered a loss due to its carelessness, so it immediately became more cautious. It looked at Ji Tianqing with murderous eyes. Roar! The Ksitigarbha divine armor roared and opened its wide and flat bloody mouth, spitting out endless glazed heavenly flames that poured down like a flood. Before Ji Tianqing could launch a counterattack, Yunyao, who had been waiting for a long time, brandished the reverse water divine sword and released a huge ice shield. An icy blue light shield with a radius of 1,000 feet enveloped her and Ji Tianqing, protecting them tightly. The celestial glaze fire that descended from the sky fiercely slammed into the icy blue light barrier, causing a series of muffled sounds to erupt. Bang 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 bang. The icy blue light barrier trembled violently and emitted a dazzling cold light. However, it did not shatter, and not even a crack appeared. No matter how terrifying the celestial glaze fire was, it was blocked by the icy blue light barrier. It could not hurt Ji Tianqing and Yunyao at all. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Bai and Shou He, who were hiding in the dark, seized the opportunity and cast a spell to launch an attack. World Return to Origin. Sword of all directions. The two of them appeared out of thin air on the left and right sides of the Ksitigarbha divine armor. They slashed out a huge sword brilliance that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, slashing the back and ribs of the Ksitigarbha divine armor. Another series of muffled bangs rang out, and the Xitigarbha divine armor was forced to retreat. The pitch-black scales on its back and ribs were also slashed by the sword light, causing flames to splatter all over the sky. An incomparably powerful impact force fiercely struck the mountain beneath it. With a series of loud rumbling sounds, the mountain collapsed on the spot and collapsed into pieces. Countless huge rocks piled up into a pile of rubble and ruins, splashing out monstrous red flames and debris. The Xitigarbha divine armor became more and more furious. Its huge body twisted and swung its sturdy tail, smashing it fiercely towards Ji Bai. Ji Bai realized that something was wrong and immediately waved his sword to block. Bang! The giant tail that was more than 20 feet long shattered his defense and sent him flying 10 miles away, smashing into the rubble. The Xitigarbha divine armor still wanted to pounce over and take advantage of the situation to kill Ji Bai. Shohei had already rushed over without caring about his own safety. He waved his sword and stabbed out hundreds of cold lights, enveloping its head. Ding ding ding. A series of crisp sounds of metal colliding rang out. Sparks continuously burst out from the head of the Xitigarbha divine armor. It was dizzy from the sword light. Its attack was blocked, so it frantically waved its claws and fiercely slapped at Shohei. Shohei had already retreated 10,000 feet away and dodged its attack. Ji Tianqing rushed over again and waved the Burial of Heaven sword, slashing out a golden sword that flickered with lightning with all his strength. Broken Moon Sword. The sword light that was 1,000 feet long descended from the sky with the divine might of thunder and struck the Xitigarbha divine armor. Boom! It was smashed into the rubble on the spot, and a long and narrow white mark appeared on its back. Tens of thousands of purple lightning arcs wrapped around its body, making crackling noises. The scene was in chaos. Lightning flashed and rubble flew everywhere. Ji Tianqing retreated to Yun Yao's side and said with a solemn expression, "The shell of this Xitigarbha divine armor is terrifyingly powerful. Ordinary methods can't hurt it at all." Yun Yao said in a solemn tone, "It has swallowed too many metal veins and has been tempered by the glass heavenly fire. Its defensive power is already comparable to a tribulation-level magic treasure. From the looks of it, only the reverse water sword can break its defense. I'll find an opportunity to kill it." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "All right, I'll create an opportunity." At the same time, the Xitigarbha divine armor had just crawled out of the rubble and was roaring at the sky. Ji Tianqing leaped into the sky, holding the Burial of Heaven with both hands and stabbing at it with all his might. Stab! A cold light flashed in the sea of fire. In the next moment, the crack on the back of the Xitigarbha divine armor emitted a cold light that blotted out the sky like a mushroom cloud. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion resounded for hundreds of miles. The Xitigarbha divine armor was sent flying by the explosion. A bloody hole appeared on its back, and countless fragments splashed out. A stream of black-red blood spurted out. Before it could crawl out, Ji Tianqing descended from the sky and released a secret technique. Lightning. The third Dharma eye on his forehead opened and released vast purple divine lightning. It condensed into a pillar of divine lightning and blasted towards the back of the Xitigarbha divine armor. Boom! Thunder exploded and resounded in the sky. The wound on the back of the Xitigarbha divine armor immediately expanded several times. The flesh on the wound also became charred like charcoal, and black smoke rose in spirals. The heart-wrenching pain made it furious. It roared and pounced towards Ji Tianqing crazily with its claws. Chapter 1759. While Ji Bai and Shohei were repelling the Xitigarbha divine armor, Ji Tianqing used his strongest trump card. He rushed to the front of the Xitigarbha divine armor as fast as a stream of light. He raised his left palm and released endless golden divine flames. God-slaying spear. The destructive golden flames condensed into a 30-meter-long spear and stabbed at the wound on the back of the Xitigarbha divine armor. The defense of the Xitigarbha divine armor was extremely strong, but its speed was not fast. It was too late to realize that something was wrong. Bang! With a loud, muffled explosion, the god-slaying spear stabbed into its back, penetrating its internal organs and exploding. A large mass of flesh and internal organs were burned to ashes by the golden divine flames. The Xitigarbha divine armor roared in pain, spitting out blood and flesh foam from its bloody mouth. It struggled and rolled wildly in the ruins. Seeing this scene, Yin Yao decisively seized the opportunity and rushed over with the water reverse divine sword. Heavenly water line, sword separates the world. She held the water reverse divine sword with both hands and used all her strength to slash out 100-meter-long icy blue sword light. Boom! The Xitigarbha divine armor could not dodge in time and was immediately slashed in the back by the sword light. The huge bloody hole with a radius of 30 meter long was immediately cut open by the sword light, and a 20-meter long wound opened. Black-red blood sprayed out like a fountain. The terrifying cold air of the water reverse divine sword invaded its body and immediately froze its flesh and internal organs. It wailed in pain a few times, and dark golden-colored glazed heavenly fire gushed out of its body. It desperately drilled into the rubble and ruins, trying to escape back to the depths of the ground. Ji Tianqing had already planned this, so how could he let it escape so easily? He took out a mysterious black talisman from his space ring, made a few gestures with both hands, and released a few dazzling lights to activate the talisman. Soul-stabilizing divine talisman. With a low shout, the black talisman ignited with flames and immediately turned into a black stream of light, flying toward the Xitigarbha divine armor. Whoosh! The mysterious black stream of light instantly drilled into the body of the Xitigarbha divine armor, releasing a mysterious invisible power. Immediately, the roars of the Xitigarbha divine armor came to an abrupt end. Its frantically struggling body also stiffened, and it was stunned on the spot. It was as if it had been petrified, as if it had lost its consciousness and remained motionless on the spot. Seeing this scene, Ji Bai and Shohei revealed puzzled expressions. Even Yun Yao was surprised. She looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. Tianqing, you sealed its soul. How did you do it? Ji Tianqing smiled and explained, when I was at the God Bestowment Mountain, I saved the third elder's life, so he gave me a bunch of talismans and pills as thanks. The soul-stabilizing sacred talisman was a saint-level talisman that he gave me. It can seal one's soul. Martial artists and demons below the martial sage realm are unable to withstand the power of the soul-stabilizing sacred symbol. I see. Yun Yao was enlightened. She smiled faintly and said, saint-level talismans are priceless treasures. You used them just like that? Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, to be able to capture a sixth-stage crossing tribulation realm Xitigarbha divine armor, it was worth it to use a saint-level talisman. Yao Yao, rest for a while. I'll deal with this Xitigarbha divine armor. After speaking, he flew to the rubble and used a capturing technique to put the Xitigarbha divine armor into the sword world. He personally escorted the Xitigarbha divine armor into the sword world and landed in the peaceful soil city. In the peaceful soil city, nearly 8,000 Earth Spirit Clan people were working and cultivating as usual. Ji Tianqing entered the city governor's mansion and asked the guards to find the clan leader, the Golden Mountain King. After the Golden Mountain King bowed to him, he asked, young master, what are your orders? Ji Tianqing smiled and said, I just captured an ancient mutated beast. I'm going to give it to the Earth Spirit Clan as the clan's guardian divine beast. The Golden Mountain King's eyes widened. He asked in surprise, what ancient mutated beast? Ji Tianqing brought him to a spacious square. Only then did he reach out and release a golden light, releasing the Xitigarbha divine armor. The 1,000-foot-long Xitigarbha divine armor landed on the square with a plop, causing the ground to tremble and dust to fly into the air. When the Golden Mountain King saw the Xitigarbha divine armor's appearance, his eyes widened in shock. This ancient mutated beast, seems to be the descendant of the burrowing earth beast. Its strength and aura are so powerful, far surpassing the essence soul realm. Could it have reached the tribulation realm? Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. That's right. This is the ancient mutated beast Xitigarbha divine armor. It's a mutated beast between a spirit beast and a divine beast. If it has enough opportunities and resources, it can also grow to the level of a divine beast in the future. Most importantly, this giant beast is the legendary overlord of the earth. It can control the earth and mineral veins. The Golden Mountain King exclaimed for a while before gradually coming back to his senses. He said excitedly, "That's right. For us Earth Spirit Clan, the burrowing Earth Beast is the best pet and companion. This Xitigarbha divine armor has a part of the bloodline of a divine beast. It's a divine beast for us." Young Master, are you really going to give such a rare ancient mutated beast to us? Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Of course. Make the best use of it. The Xitigarbha divine armor's attributes and power are very compatible with your Earth Spirit Clan. With this divine beast, the Earth Spirit Clan's people will definitely benefit greatly. I'm just worried that the soul fixation talisman can only last for half a month. Can you completely tame this tribulation realm mutated beast in such a short time?" The Golden Mountain King was stunned for a moment. He quickly nodded and said, "Of course I can. Young Master, please don't worry. Our Earth Spirit Clan has a blood spirit secret method passed down from our ancestors. It's specially used to sign a contract with a pet. I'll immediately gather all the people of the clan and build an altar to use the secret method. I'll combine the strength of all the people and use everyone's efforts to sign a contract with this Xitigarbha divine armor. As long as the spell is cast successfully, this Xitigarbha divine armor will become the guardian beast of our clan. It will guard our clan loyally forever." Hearing him say so, Ji Tianqing nodded with relief and said, "That's good. Then I'll leave it to you. You must take care of it properly." The Golden Mountain King bowed excitedly and said solemnly, "Young Master, please don't worry. I will definitely not disappoint you. This Xitigarbha divine armor is a divine beast that you gave to our clan. Our clan will always remember this kindness and be loyal to you forever." Ji Tianqing nodded and turned to leave. Swish! With a flash of brilliance, he left the sword world and returned to the Sea of Fire. Yun Yao, Ji Bai, and Shou He did not rest on the mountain peak. They had all drilled into the ruins that were piled up like mountains and were busy excavating the Golden Crow copper mine underground. Although Ji Tianqing had already obtained the most precious Golden Crow copper essence, that mine was also a priceless treasure. Since he had already encountered it, there was no reason to let it go. Chapter 1760. Yun Yao's reverse water divine sword was definitely a divine weapon for digging ore veins. Even if the Golden Crow copper ore was incomparably sturdy, she could still use the divine sword to easily dig it out from the ground. Everyone worked for a full 2 hours before they dug out the 1,000-foot-long ore vein. Unfortunately, the ore vein was no longer complete. It had been damaged by the Xitigarbha divine armor and broken into several pieces. Ji Tianqing kept a portion of the Golden Crow copper ore and put it into his spatial ring. He put the remaining pieces of the ore vein into the sword world and let the people of the Earth Spirit Clan bury the ore vein underground. After doing all this, everyone left the underground and flew back into the air. Ji Tianqing said with a gratified expression, "Although the process was somewhat dangerous and difficult, we worked together. Not only did we get through the difficulties, but we also got such a rich harvest. Everyone, let's find a place to rest for a while. After recovering our magic power, we will continue forward." After saying that, he brought Yun Yao, Ji Bai, and Shou He and landed on a pale golden mountain peak. Yun Yao used the power of the reverse water divine sword to set up a small formation to resist the power of the colored glass heavenly fire. Everyone stayed in the light barrier of the formation, took pills, sat down, and circulated their energy to adjust their breathing. However, just as everyone sat down and before they could start cultivating, a sinister sneer sounded in the sky. He. You four little guys are really stupid and ridiculous. Encountering little fat sheep like you, if I don't take advantage of you, I won't be able to live with myself. This was the voice of a middle-aged man. His voice was sharp and ear-piercing, and it was so cold that it made people feel very uncomfortable. Ji Tianqing, Yin Yao, and the others immediately looked up at the sky. They saw a middle-aged man wearing a black robe and holding a black feather fan in the sky 1,000 feet away. This person had a thin figure and wore a loose black robe, revealing a pale and narrow face. There were 2 mysterious tattoos on his cheeks, and a black spider pattern was imprinted on his forehead. His long hair was also wriggling. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that his thick, shoulder-length hair was actually made up of countless thin, black snakes. This person's entire body was emitting a dense evil aura. His sinister appearance caused people to feel fear in their hearts. Moreover, his strength had far surpassed Ji Bai and Shohei, and he'd attained the 6th level of the Tribulation Realm. Ji Tianqing looked at him for a while and frowned. He secretly sent a voice transmission to Yun Yao and the other 2, this guy is obviously an evil man. He doesn't have good intentions. Everyone, be careful. Yun Yao nodded to show that she understood. Ji Bai and Shohei immediately dispersed and used their concealment techniques to hide in the sea of fire, ready to attack at any time. The black-robed man looked down at Ji Tianqing and the others, turning a blind eye to the actions of Ji Bai and Shohei. Ha, little fellow, don't try to play tricks in front of this monarch, and don't even think about resisting. Let me give you a word of advice. Obediently hand over all the treasures you have on you, as well as the mine you just dug up. At this point, the black-robed man paused for a moment, and his gaze fell upon the burial of heaven and water reversal. Feeling the aura of the water reversal sword, his pupils immediately constricted, and a thick sense of shock flashed through his eyes. Immediately, his tone was somewhat hurried, and his voice was sharp as he shouted coldly, "And your treasured swords, you have to obediently hand them over to this monarch. Otherwise, this monarch will bury you in the sea of fire, and not even your bones will remain." Hearing these 2 sentences, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's eyes flashed with cold killing intent. Ji Tianqing stared at him coldly and asked, "We don't know you, but you want to kill us and rob us. It can be seen that you are an evil beast. However, you dare to rob us alone, I'm afraid that the one who will die is you." The black-robed man immediately laughed mockingly, waving the black feather fan, and said with contempt, "Ha. This monarch really didn't see wrongly. You 4 idiots are all inexperienced rookies. In the entire ruins of God, who doesn't know the name of the Black Feather Association? We, the Black Feather Association, don't need a reason or an excuse to rob and kill anyone. Fine, this monarch is merciful and will let you die knowing. This monarch is Yiya, the second-in-command of the Black Feather Association. Remember, we, the Black Feather Association, will never fight alone." As his voice fell, 9 figures immediately appeared in the sky around the mountain. Swish! 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 9 Tribulation Realm powerhouses with different appearances and ferocious auras stood in the sea of fire, surrounding the entire mountain. Most of these 9 Tribulation Realm powerhouses had the strength of the 2nd to 4th level of the Tribulation Realm. Among them, there was a white-haired old man, a burly man, a middle-aged scholar, and 2 dwarfs with a thick build. However, they all had a common characteristic, which was that their faces were ferocious, and their bodies exuded a bloodthirsty aura. Among them, a burly man in black armor laughed loudly and said, "Second in command, we are still in a hurry to support the Great Master. Let's end this quickly. These little rookies, just treat them as an appetizer. We can easily get rid of them. Why do you have to talk nonsense with them?" The other Tribulation Realm powerhouses also nodded in agreement, revealing ferocious and bloodthirsty sneers. They all took out their magic treasures and weapons, staring at Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao with murderous eyes, and slowly approached them. Yi, the second in command, waved his black feather fan and said with a smile, "You are a group of boors who only know how to fight and kill. Don't scare these two little guys. Especially that little beauty, she is simply an outstanding beauty. She is so beautiful that it makes one's heart itch." Before he finished speaking, the group of Tribulation Realm powerhouses all laughed evilly, revealing an expression of sudden realization. "Second in command, we understand. Don't worry. Second in command, don't be impatient. We will capture that little beauty immediately and send her to you. We want to rob her of her wealth, but we also want to rob her of her beauty. Brothers, what are you waiting for? Let's go together and get rid of them quickly. Don't let the second in command wait anxiously." Everyone shouted a few times and immediately waved their swords and sabers, using their secret techniques to kill Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Ji Bai and Shou He were eager to protect their masters. They immediately used their secret sword techniques, stabbing out sword light and saber light that filled the sky, blocking the few Tribulation Realm powerhouses. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao also immediately took action. They waved their swords and used their secret techniques to block the other party's attacks. Both sides engaged in a fierce battle in the Sea of Fire. They both used their full strength and hundreds of strange techniques, fighting until the sky turned dark. The colorful brilliance of magic power condensed into various kinds of light and shadow, intertwining and colliding in the sky, making deafening sounds. The violent and raging shock waves swept away the Sea of Fire and spread in all directions. Although Ji Tianqing and the other three fought back with all their strength, it was difficult for them to fight against the 9 Tribulation Realm powerhouses. They were beaten back and were in danger. Seeing this scene, Yi stood in the sky calmly, watching the battle with a sneer on his face. In his opinion, Ji Tianqing and the other three were bound to die. There was no possibility of survival. Chapter 1761. The two sides fought for 100 breaths of time before stopping temporarily. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and the others retreated to the broken mountain peak, forming a defensive circle around each other. Ji Bai and Shou He were both injured. Their bodies were stained with blood, and their clothes were tattered and ragged. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were also slightly injured. Their robes were stained with blood, and their long hair was draped over their shoulders in a mess. The 1,000-feet mountain peak under their feet was also cracked with dense ravines, and half of it collapsed. The bandits of the Black Feather Gang were still scattered in the sky, surrounding Ji Tianqing and the others. However, they also paid a big price. 2 of the bandits were relatively weak. They were seriously injured by Ji Bai and Shou He. Their bodies were on the verge of collapse, so they could only escape first. Of the remaining 7 bandits, 4 of them were also injured, and their bodies were dyed red with blood. Seeing this scene, the sneer on Yi Ya's face disappeared. Holding the black feather fan in his hand, he shouted coldly with a gloomy face, "You pieces of trash, weren't you arrogant just now? Why can't you even deal with 4 rookies?" The brawny man in black armor wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said in a dull voice, "Second Master, these 4 guys are not easy to deal with. They can't be underestimated." Another white-haired old man also said in a ruthless tone, "Second Master, the swords of those 2 little beasts don't seem to be ordinary. They are at least saint-level magic treasures." In the battle just now, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao seemed to be the weakest, but they displayed amazing combat strength. Especially Yun Yao's water-reversed divine sword, it was simply unstoppable, and its divine power was matchless. Yi Ya immediately frowned and shouted angrily with a gloomy expression, "Nonsense. If they didn't have such a precious treasure, why would I stop halfway and waste my time to deal with them? You are so useless, do you want me to do it myself?" The bandits were silent, and no one answered. After a while, the black-armored man said in a deep voice, "Second Master, give us another chance. If we can't take him down, you'll have to do it yourself. As he spoke, the black-armored man took the lead and rushed towards Ji Tianqing. He brandished his crimson broadsword, and slashed out a monstrous flame. Ji Bai immediately rushed forward, waving his mysterious black blade, slashing out 19 dazzling blade lights. His saber technique was as fast as lightning, and each strike was faster than the previous one. The power of each strike overlapped like an endless wave. No matter how ferocious the black-armored man's attacks were, they were unable to break through his defense. The other bandits also used their unique skills and charged toward Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao without any regard for their own safety. 3,000 weak waters. Yun Yao shouted with a cold expression. She formed a sword seal with her left hand and waved the divine sword with her right hand, slashing out hundreds of sword lights. Swish swish swish. The sword light in the sky formed a sword net that contained the wondrous power of a formation. It turned into a huge vortex that charged toward the bandits. The attacks of the bandits were immediately swallowed by the blue vortex and dissipated. Immediately after, they were also shrouded by the blue vortex and had to endure countless sword lights. They were unable to protect themselves. Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to use his unique skill. He unleashed his 1,000-feet-tall golden sword essence and slashed it at the white-haired old man. White Tiger Sacred Sword. The golden sword essence burst out with a golden light that soared into the sky, forming a huge white tiger phantom that was as large as a mountain. Its power increased several times. The giant sword fell from the sky and instantly slashed the white-haired old man, sending him flying backward. Puff, while he was still in the air, the white-haired old man spat out blood. His entire left arm was cut off. Seeing this scene, Yi Ya's face turned extremely ugly and his eyes were incomparably gloomy. He could no longer remain calm. He shook the black feather fan in his hand and unleashed an overwhelming number of black light blades that rushed toward Ji Tianqing. Soul-rending kill. More than 200 black light blades spun crazily and formed an inescapable net that enveloped Ji Tianqing, leaving him nowhere to hide. The black light blades contained an extremely powerful force that specialized in destroying the soul. It was very insidious. Ji Tianqing's heart trembled. He immediately used his unique skill to block Yi Ya's attack. His body ignited with golden flames and turned into a golden light that merged into the golden sword essence. The Burial of Heaven sword also became 10,000 feet tall and merged with the golden sword essence. Vermilion Bird Sacred Sword. The 10,000 feet tall giant sword erupted with destructive power and slashed toward the black light blades. Kaboom! A loud explosion that shook the 9 heavens erupted and resounded through the sky. The inescapable net formed by the black light blades was shattered on the spot and splashed in all directions. The power of the giant sword essence was also exhausted and became dim as it flew back 10,000 feet long. Swoosh! The Burial of Heaven sword was ejected and Ji Tianqing was also sent flying. He appeared in the sky with a pale face and spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood in a row. On the surface, he didn't seem to be injured. However, his internal organs had been ruptured and more than a dozen of his meridians had been broken. Most importantly, his soul had suffered a heavy blow and his consciousness had been blurred. Damn Yi Ya! He must have the strength of a 7th-stage tribulation transcendent stage cultivator. This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind and his heart was filled with anger and unwillingness. The difference in strength between him and Yi Ya was too great. Even if he tried his best and used his strongest trump card, he couldn't shake Yi Ya. On the contrary, Yi Ya's casual secret technique had seriously injured him. Such a result made him want to retreat. We can't stay here any longer. Otherwise, we will all die here. We must find a way to escape. After making up his mind, he hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Yun Yao and Ji Bai to stay in the dark. Then, he took out a dark red elixir from his interspatial ring and stuffed it into his mouth. This elixir was called the World Annihilation Elixir. It was a tribulation transcendence elixir personally refined by Hong Qingtian. The elixir's name was very domineering and its effect was also very domineering. After Ji Tianqing took the world annihilation elixir, the elixir quickly dissolved in his body and erupted with endless magic power, causing his body to swell violently. His injuries were temporarily suppressed and his nerves were numb, so he couldn't feel any pain. His combat strength was increasing at an incredible speed. In just a few breaths, he had become a 30-meter-tall giant and his combat strength had increased by 5 times. The world annihilation elixir's effect can only last for 100 breaths of time. Once the elixir's effect is over, I will collapse and faint. I must escape with everyone during this period of time. Fight with your back to the river. Victory or defeat depends on this. This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind and he hurriedly used his secret technique and rushed toward Yiya without any regard for his own safety. Heaven-splitting sword. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed with all his strength. A 1,000-meter-long golden sword immediately appeared in the sky and slashed toward Yiya with the power to destroy the world. An unlucky bandit happened to be between Ji Tianqing and Yiya and was instantly hit by the giant sword. Bang! With a muffled explosion, the third-stage tribulation transcendence realm bandit was directly smashed into pieces by the giant sword and turned into pieces of flesh and blood that filled the sky. In the next moment, the giant sword arrived in front of Yiya and golden light enveloped his body. Chapter 1762. At the critical moment, Yiya did not hesitate to use a secret technique to block the attack of the giant golden sword. He stretched out his arms and released a soaring black light, which condensed into 4 pairs of wide black wings to protect himself. At the same time, the giant golden sword that was thousands of feet long struck him hard. Bam! With a dull explosion, he was sent flying by the giant sword, rolling and crashing into the ruins in the distance. Boom! The mound of ruins that was thousands of feet high was smashed into pieces by him, splashing gravel all over the sky. The 4 pairs of huge black wings were also cracked by the huge sword, and were shattered into pieces along with a cracking sound. However, Yiya's strength was indeed strong. After taking such a heavy blow, he was only slightly injured. After crashing into the ruins, black light gushed out of his body and shook the gravel around him away. His figure flashed and rushed out. At this time, Ji Tianqing had already taken Yin Yao and Ji Bai to guard the dark. They broke through the encirclement of several bandits and fled as fast as lightning. Yiya shouted in a cold tone and chased after them with a murderous aura. "Kid, you still want to escape? Dream on." In order to snatch Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's treasured swords, he had already lost several capable men. If he could not kill Ji Tianqing and the others smoothly, his loss would be too great. In the blink of an eye, Yiya caught up with Ji Tianqing and the others. He released an overwhelming black light, which formed tens of thousands of ferocious-looking black crows and enveloped them. Wherever the black crows passed, even the colored glass heavenly fire was swept away. Tens of thousands of black crows lined up neatly and formed a huge net, releasing an extremely powerful suppressive force. Yun Yao hurriedly waved the water reversal divine sword and slashed out hundreds of sword lights with all her might. Bam, 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 bam. The icy blue sword light that was hundreds of feet long slashed at the black crows in the sky, creating an earth-shattering sound. At least thousands of black crows were smashed into pieces by the sword light on the spot. A huge gap was torn in the black net, which could not trap Ji Tianqing and the others at all. Swish! Swish! With a flash of multicolored light, Ji Tianqing and the others rushed out of the black light net and into the vast sea of fire. Ji Bai and Shohei worked together to cast a secret technique and used the void escape technique. They brought Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and teleported dozens of miles away. Yiya was immediately shaken off. He flew into a rage and led several bandits in a chase. However, the bandits were all injured and flying at a slower speed. There was no way they could catch up. Yiya's speed was the fastest. After 100 breaths of time, he was about to catch up with Ji Tianqing and the others. However, Ji Tianqing and his companions had all crawled into the magical equipment space of the reverse water sword. Yun Yao controlled the reverse water sword and disappeared into the crimson sea of fire at the speed of light. No matter how strong Yiya was, no matter how good his hunting skills were, it was impossible for him to catch up. A quarter of an hour later, he was completely shaken off and lost track of Ji Tianqing and the others. Helplessly, he could only give up the chase. Not long after, several bandits rushed over and surrounded him. Seeing his gloomy expression and his soaring anger and killing intent, the bandits were silent and did not dare to speak. They looked trembling with fear. Yiya stared at the depths of the flaming mountain, his eyes flashing with a ferocious cold light. Damn little bastards, you actually fled into the depths of the flaming mountain. You are courting death. Don't let me find you, or I will skin you all and tear you into pieces. Yiya cursed with a venomous tone, his heart filled with humiliation and anger. As the second-in-command of the Black Feather Gang, he had always been able to call the wind and summon the rain and do whatever he wanted. However, he never expected that he would fall in the hands of a few rookies. Not only did he fail to steal the treasure, but he also suffered such heavy losses. This was simply a great humiliation. Yiya had to consider how he should explain this to the first master. In the depths of the flaming mountain, under a certain mountain range, the 3-feet-long reverse water divine sword had shrunk to the size of an embroidery needle and was hidden in the rock layer underground, motionless. The terrifying glass heavenly fire could not do anything to the reverse water divine sword. Inside the reverse water divine sword, there was a vast magic treasure space. This space was dozens of miles wide, like a small world. There was no sun, moon, or stars in the small world, but there was a huge ice-blue water ball hanging in the sky, emitting endless cold light. There was a grassland, a lake, and a tall mountain on the ground. At the top of the mountain, there was also an ice-blue palace built, as if it was made of ice. It was magnificent. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, Ji Bai, and Shohei were all in the palace, healing their injuries. Ji Bai and Shohei's injuries were slightly lighter, so they were sitting in the main hall, recuperating. Ji Tianqing's injuries were the most serious, and he was healing in the secret room. Yun Yao sat in front of him, using a secret technique with a solemn expression. She activated the longevity divine power and continuously poured it into his body. Under the nourishment of the longevity divine power, his injuries quickly healed, and the injuries to his meridians and divine soul were also quickly healing. After an entire day, Ji Tianqing's injuries stabilized, and Yun Yao stopped casting. She stayed beside Ji Tianqing, silently meditating and recuperating. Half a day later, Ji Tianqing's injuries and magic power were 80% recovered, and he ended his cultivation. Yun Yao opened her eyes and asked with concern, "Tianqing, how do you feel?" Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "It's nothing serious, don't worry." After a pause, he asked Yun Yao, "Yao Yao, where are we now?" Yun Yao revealed a helpless look and said bitterly, "I don't know, I was too anxious when I ran away and forgot to remember the route. However, we ran for 200,000 miles in one breath, so we should be in the depths of the flaming mountain now." The depths of the flaming mountain? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows, and the corner of his mouth curled into a meaningful sneer. "I heard them say before that the glazed fire dragon appeared in the depths of the flaming mountain, and hundreds of experts have come here, trying to capture the glazed fire dragon. If we are lucky, we should be able to see the legendary glazed fire dragon soon." Yun Yao thought for a moment and shook her head gently. "If we really see the glazed fire dragon, it might not be lucky. It must be very dangerous to be surrounded by hundreds of experts." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "That's true, but we are weak, and it's easy for others to ignore us. As long as we don't run into people from the Black Feather Gang, we should be safe." Black Feather Gang. Yun Yao frowned and thought for a moment, and reminded him with a serious face, "Tianqing, I think I heard people from the Black Feather Gang say that they are rushing to support the big boss. It seems that the big boss of the Black Feather Gang must be in the depths of the Flaming Mountain, and is most likely dealing with the glazed fire dragon. We must be extra careful, or else we might be discovered by the Black Feather Gang." Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood, and reminded Yun Yao, "Let's put the glazed fire dragon aside first, and ignore it." Chapter 1763. Ji Tianqing had already gathered 3 of the 4 materials needed to repair the Burial of Heaven. He already had the heavenly fire glazed true gold, yin-yang divine jade, and golden crow copper marrow. He was only missing the wind thunder meteorite. With his previous experience, Ji Tianqing was even more cautious this time. He had Yun Yao put away the reverse water divine sword to prevent its aura from attracting the covetous eyes of experts. The 2 of them flew through the blazing mountain, unhurriedly searching the various peaks and exploring the underground veins. Soon, the 2 of them discovered that this area was indeed the depths of the blazing mountain, and it was even more dangerous and terrifying. The sea of fire was even more violent, and the underground veins were even more abundant. At the same time, the various demons and giant beasts hiding underground were also denser and stronger. The 2 of them could only slow down and explore even more carefully. 2 hours later, while the 2 of them were exploring the underground veins, they awakened an ancient mutated beast, the blazing dragon lion. It was a giant beast that was as big as a mountain and had an explosive temperament. It had already undergone 6 heavenly tribulations. The 2 of them were chased by the blazing dragon lion. After a dozen or so moves in the sea of fire, they quickly retreated. If they fought with all their strength, they could naturally defeat the blazing dragon lion with their trump cards. However, doing so was meaningless. They would not gain any benefits and would even put themselves in danger. If the battle caused too much of a commotion and attracted other demons or experts, their situation would become even more dangerous. Therefore, the 2 of them chose to retreat and shake off the blazing dragon lion. For the next half a day, the 2 of them walked through the blazing mountain, exploring the veins even more cautiously. During this process, they encountered several groups of tribulation transcendence experts. These experts came from all over the world. There were famous orthodox sects and also evil sections. Some of them were digging for veins and gems underground, while others were hurrying on as if they were searching for something. However, everyone remained vigilant and guarded against each other. Even if they encountered each other, they would not easily meet each other, let alone have no conflicts. Before they knew it, it was already night. The blazing mountain in the middle of the night was a gorgeous and magnificent sight. The night sky was dark, and there were sparse stars scattered in the firmament, shining brightly and emitting a cold light. On the ground, there was a boundless sea of fire. Raging scarlet flames surged and rose. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were traversing through the mountains, releasing their divine senses to explore the underground veins. Suddenly, a loud, dull sound came from the distant night sky. Rumble. The muffled sound was like muffled thunder in summer, rolling from the horizon and reverberating in the sky above the mountain of flames. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were awakened. They immediately looked up at the night sky in the depths of the fiery mountain. In the dark night sky, rays of colorful light flashed across like lightning. The dazzling multicolored lights condensed into sword and saber auras, as well as the shadows of various spells. They collided fiercely in the night sky, then collapsed and shattered. Clearly, there were experts fighting in the depths of the mountain of flames. Ever since Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao entered the flaming mountain, they had seen countless tribulation transcendence experts and saw many experts fighting. However, it was the first time they had seen such an earth-shattering scene. The area where the brilliance of the spells lit up was at least tens of thousands of miles away from them. Only experts above the 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm could cause such an astonishing movement. The 2 stood on the top of the mountain, looking at the night sky in the north, quietly observing. Suddenly, the two saw a huge fiery red shadow flashing in the light of the spells that lit up the night sky. That light shadow was at least dozens of miles long. Its appearance was like a giant dragon. It cut through the night sky fiercely and shattered countless sword and saber auras. Not long after, the two of them heard muffled sounds coming from the horizon, mixed with a few high-pitched dragon roars. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's expressions suddenly changed, and their eyes flashed with bright light. There's actually a dragon roar. Could that huge light shadow just now be the glazed fire dragon? The experts who come here are very cautious. They won't act rashly. If I'm not wrong, there should be a group of experts besieging the glazed fire dragon. The two of them exchanged a few words through voice transmission and then looked at each other. Why don't we go over and take a look? Okay. Even if we can't interfere, it's good to see it with our own eyes. After a short conversation, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao reached a consensus and rushed to the north together. In order to reach the scene as soon as possible, Ji Tianqing rode the primordial spirit magic sword and flew with Yun Yao. As time passed, the two of them quickly approached the battlefield of the battle. The closer they were to the battlefield, the clearer the scene of the battle became. All kinds of dazzling and colorful spells constantly flickered in the night sky, weaving a breathtaking scene and blowing a storm that covered the sky. The giant dragon phantom that traversed the night sky appeared dozens of times. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao became more and more certain that their judgment was correct. After a full 4 hours, the two of them flew 60,000 miles away and arrived near the battlefield. However, when the two of them arrived, the battle had already ended. The two of them could only see that the mountain range and the ground within a radius of 500 miles had turned into ruins. The ground was covered with huge pits and ravines, and there were piles of messy gravel everywhere. In many of the pits and ruins, there were also fragments of weapons and armor scattered, stained with dark red blood. There were also some scattered pieces of corpses scattered in every corner of the ruins, inconspicuous. The world was still filled with chaotic Dharma power aura, and the surging sea of fire could not wipe away the traces of the battle. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao discovered that several groups of powerhouses were riddled with scars and looked terrible. These people looked depressed and quietly left the battlefield, retreating into the distance. In addition, many powerhouses rushed over from all directions to check the situation of the battlefield like them. The two of them didn't need to ask to know that those powerhouses must have seen the scene of the battle and rushed over to check it out. An hour later, the two of them checked the ruins and found many clues. During this period, Ji Tianqing also saved a seriously injured Tribulation Transcendence powerhouse who was on the verge of losing consciousness. After saving that powerhouse, he asked a lot of questions. That expert was filled with gratitude and told Ji Tianqing everything he knew about the situation. After he recovered some of his Dharma power, he bid farewell to Ji Tianqing and quietly left the battlefield. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao also left the ruins and continued to rush into the depths of the flaming mountain. While hurrying, the two of them were still communicating with each other through voice transmission. It's a pity that we came too late. The glazed fire dragon has already escaped. I just asked. Last night, several groups of powerhouses discovered the glazed fire dragon and joined forces to besiege it. However, the first few groups of powerhouses who attacked were basically killed by the glazed fire dragon. The commotion of the battle attracted more people to join the battle and join forces to besiege the glazed fire dragon. However, those powerhouses were no match for the glazed fire dragon and suffered heavy casualties. Chapter 1764. After hearing Ji Tianqing's words, Yun Yao looked confused and surprised. Those top powers were all in the Crossing Calamity realm and most of them were above level 2. Dozens of top powers in the Crossing Calamity realm could not defeat the glazed fire dragon and more than half of them were killed. Has the glazed fire dragon reached the martial sage realm? Ji Tianqing shook his head and said firmly, I have asked that person just now. The glazed fire dragon's strength is definitely not at the martial sage realm. It is still in the crossing calamity realm. That is why those top powers dared to attack the glazed fire dragon when they found it. If it has reached the martial sage realm, who would dare to attack it? Yun Yao was enlightened and nodded, I see. But Granny Long said that the glazed fire dragon had passed through the 8th calamity 1,000 years ago. Now that 1,000 years have passed, why is the glazed fire dragon still in the crossing calamity realm? I don't know about that. Ji Tianqing said solemnly, before that top power left, he told me that the glazed fire dragon's lair might be nearby. He has been exploring this area for half a month and has met hundreds of top powers in the crossing calamity realm. Now, everyone is searching for the glazed fire dragon's lair and they all want to tame it. Yun Yao looked at the sky in the north and said in a complicated tone, those top powers are rushing to the north. This means that the glazed fire dragon's lair might be somewhere in the north. Tianqing, should we continue to look for the mineral veins or should we rush over now? Ji Tianqing thought for a while and made up his mind. He said, we don't have to rush. Let's rush to the north and explore the mineral veins along the way. Okay. Yun Yao nodded. Then, she thought of something important and asked, Tianqing, it is getting closer to your crossing calamity. Are you ready? Ji Tianqing smiled confidently and nodded, the calamity should come tomorrow. However, I can go through it at any time. Yun Yao shook her head and looked at him seriously. She advised, if we were on Luotian Mountain, I wouldn't be worried about you. But this is Flame Mountain. Danger lurks at every step, and experts are everywhere. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, it doesn't matter. Perhaps this is God's will. Yun Yao saw that he was so confident, as if he had a card up his sleeve, and the worry in her heart dissipated. Unknowingly, 10 hours had passed and it was already noon. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao continued to explore. They had already explored tens of thousands of miles of mountain range. During this period, the two of them discovered hundreds of mineral veins. Basically, they were all ancient mineral veins with a history of 10,000 years. All kinds of ancient mineral veins contained rare and precious ores and gems, which were very tempting. However, their goal was very clear. They would not waste time on those mineral veins. At this moment, when the two of them flew past a low-lying valley, Ji Tianqing suddenly stopped. He stood in the sky above the valley and looked down at the valley below. He concentrated on controlling his divine sense to explore the situation underground. Seeing that he had stopped, Yun Yao asked him telepathically, Tianqing, did you find something? Ji Tianqing nodded and said, there seems to be the aura of thunder and lightning under this valley. It's very unusual. Yun Yao also released her divine sense, carefully probing the 100-mile-wide valley. Soon, she found some clues. There is indeed the power of thunder and wind. Could it be that there is wind and thunder meteorite iron under this valley? Ji Tianqing smiled and said, it's very likely. Let's go down and take a look. After that, the two of them passed through the sea of fire and landed in the pale golden valley. The terrain of the valley was rather strange. It was like a huge porcelain bowl. The top was open and the bottom was flat. Moreover, the valley was surrounded by mountains, as if a huge dragon was entrenched here. Special terrains and environments would often give birth to special heavenly treasures. This was the common knowledge of the martial arts world. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao used the earth escape technique to pass through the pale golden ground and rock layer, and drilled into the depths of the ground. When the two of them drilled into the ground, they fell into a spacious cave. This cave with a radius of 10,000 feet was naturally formed. The cave was filled with raging red fire. The temperature was terrifyingly high, like a huge furnace. The walls of the cave were dark golden. There were also rows of icicle-like stalactites hanging on the ceiling. Ji Tianqing was looking at the situation in the cave. At this time, Yun Yao exclaimed in a low voice, Tianqing, look under your feet. He lowered his head and looked at the ground under his feet. He saw that the ground of the cave was quite flat. It was a layer of dark golden rock. The ground was covered with lines of the rock layer. They were densely packed and intertwined together, vaguely forming some kind of special pattern. Those lines were still glowing with dark red and light purple light, as if they were transmitting some kind of power. In the middle of the cave, there was a huge rock with a radius of 100 feet protruding from the ground. The huge rock was round, like a huge millstone. Only the top half of it was exposed, and the bottom half was connected to the ground. The lines on the ground and the rock extended to the surroundings of the huge rock and surrounded it. At first glance, the lines on the ground and the huge rock looked like a mysterious formation. Ji Tianqing used his divine sense to sense for a moment and found that it was indeed a formation, and it was formed naturally. Not only the ground and the huge rock, but even the entire cave was filled with the power of a formation. There are all kinds of strange things in this world. I didn't expect this cave to form a natural formation. I don't know how many tens of thousands of years have passed before this place became like this today. Ji Tianqing's eyes were filled with joy as he exclaimed. Yun Yao also stared at the huge rock with bright eyes and said expectantly, "Tianqing, that huge rock is the core and foundation of the formation. The power of heaven and earth absorbed by this natural formation has gathered in that huge rock. I can sense that terrifying heavenly flame, lightning, and astral wind energies have been accumulated in that seemingly ordinary rock." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a chuckle, "Now that you mention it, I feel that the huge rock is like an egg. As long as we peel off the eggshell, we will be able to find the treasure inside." Yun Yao also revealed a faint smile and said in a complicated tone, "I hope our guess is right. This huge rock has the materials you want." As she spoke, she took out the reverse water sword and walked toward the huge rock. She walked to the side of the huge rock and stood still. After a moment of consideration, she held the reverse water sword and slashed at a corner of the huge rock. Clang! With a crisp sound of metal colliding, the corner of the huge rock was cut off. A large piece of golden rock fell to the ground. The cut was smooth and flat, and it spewed out a scorching red fire. Chapter 1765. When the purple light lit up, a violent and ferocious lightning arc suddenly exploded in the air. Crack! Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were pleasantly surprised when they saw the thunder. Just as I thought. We have the heavenly fire and thunder. Together with the astral wind, we have enough conditions to form the wind-thunder meteorite. Yun Yao stared at the round boulder with sparkling eyes and said to Ji Tianqing, "Tianqing, this boulder should be a meteorite from outer space. Its material is very hard. Other than the reverse water divine sword, ordinary magical treasures can't cut it at all." Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement and analyzed, "It should be a meteorite from outer space. This is the only way to explain the origin of this valley, this cave, and this natural array. Maybe tens of thousands of years ago, a meteorite flew from outer space and smashed into this area. A deep pit was smashed into the ground. The bottom was small and flat. The top of the pit was spread out by the impact, forming the shape of a bowl. After many years, the deep pit became this bowl-like valley. This meteorite from outer space was also sleeping deep underground. The mysterious power of the meteorite and the special environment of the fiery mountain formed a cave here. After many years, the cave and the meteorite gradually absorbed the power of heaven and earth and formed this natural array. Later on, the array absorbed the heavenly fire, thunder, and astral wind and gathered them in the meteorite. It was these tens of thousands of years and this meteorite that created this marvelous scene today." Yun Yao agreed with Ji Tianqing's analysis. "Tianqing, the process of your analysis should be the truth. Even if there are some deviations, it's not a big deal. However, this is just our guess. The key is whether or not the wind-thunder meteorite is formed in this meteorite." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded, "This is simple. Cut it open with the heavenly fire divine sword, and the answer will be revealed soon. Yunyao nodded in agreement. She held the reverse water divine sword again and slashed at the huge meteorite. Another crisp clang rang out, and another corner of the meteorite was cut off by the divine sword. Yunyao didn't break the meteorite directly because she was afraid of damaging the wind-thunder meteorite iron inside the meteorite. Like peeling a fruit, she held the reverse water divine sword and cut off the edges of the meteorite bit by bit. As time passed, the meteorite became smaller and smaller. The reverse water divine sword was truly capable of slicing through iron like mud. It was indestructible. Ji Tianqing collected the shaved meteorites and stored them in his spatial ring. This meteorite had been refined by the heaven fire, wind, and thunder for tens of thousands of years, and had become an extremely rare gem. It was already a top-grade treasure. Very quickly, 2 hours passed. Yunyao had also shaved more than half of the meteorite that had a radius of 10 zhang, leaving only 3 zhang in size. At the edge of the meteorite, purple stone could be clearly seen. It was formed after being nourished by lightning for tens of thousands of years. At the same time, the heavenly fire, lightning, and astral wind continued to surge out from the fracture. This made Yunyao even more certain that the wind-thunder meteorite iron must have been formed in the core of the meteorite. She didn't feel tired at all. She continued to wield the reverse water divine sword and exploit the meteorite bit by bit. However, after more than half of the meteorite had been shaved off, the natural formation in the cave was destroyed. As time passed, the ground and walls of the cave began to change greatly. The rock layer on the ground began to crack. The lines and patterns on the ground were broken and twisted. The rock walls around the cave kept cracking. Even the stalactites on the ceiling of the cave broke and fell to the ground. Not long after, muffled rumbling sounds came from underground. The ground began to tremble. Ji Tianqing subconsciously thought that some powerful demon beast was hiding underground and had been awakened by him and Yunyao. He immediately took out the sword of burial of heaven and checked the ground vigilantly. However, when he probed the ground with his soul consciousness, he found that no demon beast had appeared. It was only because the natural formation had been destroyed that the balance of this area was broken. That was why the ground had cracked and changed so drastically. The rumbling sounds became more and more deafening. The cave shook more and more violently. The ceiling of the cave kept cracking. Many golden boulders fell down and hit the ground with loud bangs. Ji Tianqing hurriedly blocked the boulders so that they wouldn't affect Yunyao. Seeing that the cave was collapsing faster and faster, he reminded her, "Yao Yao, we have to speed up. The cave is about to collapse." Yunyao answered without turning her head, "Okay. Hold on a little longer. We will see the result soon." As expected, she sped up and quickly cut the meteorite. About 7 minutes later, 90% of the huge meteorite had been cut. It was only 10 feet long. At this point, the dark golden meteorite had turned into a dazzling color. Not only was there the purple of the lightning thunder, but there was also the gold of the heavenly fire and the pale white of the astral wind. This was no longer just a meteorite. It was a magnificent gem. Suddenly, there was a loud rumbling sound. The crumbling cave could no longer withstand the impact of the ground cracking. It collapsed immediately. The walls of the cave collapsed. The huge ceiling of the cave was broken into pieces and smashed down with a terrifying force. "Yao Yao, be careful." Ji Tianqing's expression changed. He immediately took out his Kenshin battle robe and formed a pair of golden wings. He opened his wide golden wings to protect himself and Yunyao. Boom! 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 The huge boulders that covered the sky immediately drowned him and Yunyao. A deafening rumbling sound resounded through the sky. The valley within a 100-mile radius collapsed and caved in deeply. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were buried deep underground. The originally flat valley turned into a deep, broken pit. The mountains around the valley were also affected. They shook violently and cracked. Loud noises shook the sky. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were protected by the golden wings. They were not injured. However, the two of them were buried under endless earth and rocks. It was as if they were being suppressed by a huge mountain. They could not hold on for too long. Yun Yao did not have time to slowly cut the meteorite and look for the wind and thunder meteorite iron. In a hurry, she had to use the water reverse divine sword to dig up the 3-meter-long 5-colored meteorite. The meteorite, which seemed to be only the size of a millstone, was actually as heavy as a 10,000-foot mountain. Ji Tianqing opened the entrance of the sword world and put the whole meteorite into the sword world. He would slowly cut it up later. After doing all this, he and Yun Yao tried their best to get out of the ground. However, the earth-shaking sound from before had already spread throughout a 1,000-mile radius. It had alarmed several groups of strong masters in the tribulation stage. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao left the ruined valley. As soon as they flew high into the sky, they were targeted by 2 groups of strong masters. There were only 3 strong masters in one group. They seemed to be from a famous sect. They were all wearing Taoist robes and feathered crowns. However, there were 6 strong masters in the other group. They were all injured and looked ferocious. Chapter 1766. Yi flew quietly in the sea of fire and stared ahead gloomily. His long hair was fluttering in the wind. His face was cold and twisted, and his whole body was surging with killing intent. He had found Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao in front of him and wanted to kill them immediately. But he kept calm and tried to restrain the anger and killing intent in his heart. He knew very well that although Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao looked weak, they had good fighting strength. If he acted rashly, even if he could injure them, he might not be able to kill them. Therefore, Yi waited patiently for an opportunity. The 5 injured bandits were following behind him and were on guard at all times. Everyone secretly followed Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and flew 30,000 miles away. One of the bandits finally couldn't hold back the doubts in his heart and asked Yi through voice transmission, "Second Master, we finally found those 2 guys. When can we take action?" Yi replied through voice transmission without looking back, "Those 2 little bastards' strength and means can't be underestimated. We've already suffered a loss once before. How can we not learn a lesson? I've already contacted the First Master. They are in the depths of the Mountain of Flames in the north and are busy searching for the lair of the glazed fire dragon. Those 2 little bastards went straight to the north. They must want to find the glazed fire dragon's lair too. Since that's the case, they're walking right into the trap. We just need to follow them and we'll soon find a chance to kill them completely." The bandits all heard his voice transmission and immediately understood what he meant. "I understand. Second Master means that we just need to keep an eye on those 2 guys. That man and woman are rushing to the north and will soon meet the First Master and the others. At that time, we can easily kill them. Second Master is wise. We've already failed once. We can't act rashly again." The bandits had seen Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's means and were also seriously injured. If they had a choice, they certainly didn't want to fight with them again. One of them might die on the spot. Following the other party like this and waiting to meet up with the First Master was both worry-free and safe, so why not? However, at this moment, Yi suddenly realized that Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had changed their route. They did not continue to fly north. Instead, they turned around and flew east. Judging from the 2's movements, it seemed like they had suddenly discovered something and changed their minds. Yi immediately frowned and his face darkened. He cursed to himself, 2 damned little bastards. Could it be that they had already discovered that this monarch was following them? But, this monarch has used the most covert tracking technique and has always maintained a distance of 50 kilometers from them. It's impossible for them to discover me. Yi muttered in his heart and was slightly bewildered. The criminals behind him also noticed that Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had changed their direction. They immediately became anxious. Second Master, those two fellows actually went east. Have they already discovered us? Second Master, what should we do now? Continue to follow them? They must have discovered us. If we don't take action now, I'm afraid they will escape again. Second Master, make a decision quickly. When Yiya heard the words of the criminals, his face immediately darkened and he scolded in a dignified tone, "It must be because you pieces of trash were exposed that they were alerted." The criminals were rendered speechless by his scolding. They could only remain silent and could not refute him. Yiya continued, "What are you waiting for? Follow those two fellows closely and see what they want to do. If they want to escape, we'll take action." After that, he sped up with the criminals, for fear that Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao would escape. About 2 hours later, both parties had flown more than 10,000 kilometers. At this time, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao suddenly stopped. The two of them landed in a deep valley and hid at the bottom of the valley. On both sides of the canyon were towering mountains that were thousands of feet high and stretched for tens of thousands of kilometers. The canyon was hundreds of kilometers long and dozens of kilometers wide. The terrain was quite rugged and steep. The raging red fire enveloped the canyon and obscured the situation at the bottom, making it impossible to see clearly. Yiya saw Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao enter the bottom of the canyon with his own eyes and immediately revealed a sinister smile. Humph! Those two reckless things, could it be that they still want to rely on this canyon to escape from this monarch's pursuit? It just so happens that the terrain here is desolate and almost no one comes to disturb us. Since they've chosen to hide here, we'll turn this canyon into their burial ground. As he spoke, Yiya led the criminals and rushed into the canyon with a murderous aura. Of course, Yiya did not want to repeat the same mistake and could not just charge in recklessly. After entering the canyon, he first ascertained the location of Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Then, he took out 5 palm-sized black statues and handed them to the 5 criminals. "The few of you, take my 5 poison command and go to the 5 directions of Ding, Mao, Chen, Yin, and Hai respectively. Follow my instructions and plant the 5 poison command. I want to set up a heaven extinction earthly fiend 5 poison formation and seal this canyon so that they have no place to escape. This time, we can only succeed, we cannot fail." The 5 criminals each took a black statue and revealed a look of anticipation. They nodded solemnly to show that they understood. Then, the 5 criminals spread out in the canyon with the 5 poison command and went to set up the array foundation. Yiya stood in the sky above the canyon and took out many spirit stones, compasses, and array formation materials. He began to set up a tribulation level array. The heaven extinction earthly fiend 5 poison formation he wanted to set up was a high-grade tribulation level array. It could seal hundreds of miles of heaven and earth and release the heaven extinction earthly fiend 5 poison to kill all living things. Hundreds of years ago, he was the notorious butcher and executioner of the heaven extinction divine kingdom. He once used the heaven extinction earthly fiend 5 poison formation to destroy a 1,000-year-old ancient city overnight and poison more than 1 million people to ashes. Even the birds and beasts inside and outside the city, as well as the ants and insects underground, were all wiped out. Under the cover of the array, hundreds of miles of heaven and earth were barren. Now that hundreds of years had passed, his strength was several times stronger, and the power of the array he used was also more powerful. He had absolute confidence that once the array was set up, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao would not be able to escape and would not be able to escape. At the same time, in a cave at the bottom of the valley, Ji Tianqing was sitting cross-legged in the cave, meditating with a solemn expression. Yun Yao was holding the reverse water divine sword and guarding the entrance of the cave with a serious expression. Her eyes were full of concern. She looked at Ji Tianqing, then looked up at the sky and prayed silently, "Tianqing, O Tianqing, even if you are a genius, nothing must happen to you during the tribulation in the flaming mountain. Just as she was praying in her heart, the sky above the valley began to change. Chapter 1767. In a short 100 breaths of time, the entire canyon was covered by gray clouds. Endless gray clouds gathered together, spinning rapidly, forming a black vortex with a radius of 100 miles. Purple and blue lightning arcs flickered continuously in the pitch-black vortex, lighting up with dazzling lightning. An incomparably violent hurricane pressed down, blowing away the heavenly fire in the canyon. Yi and the 5 bandits were busy setting up the grand array, and it was about to be completed. Suddenly seeing the strange phenomenon in the sky, everyone stopped and revealed a bewildered expression. What's going on? Why did a heaven and earth phenomenon suddenly appear? Heavens! Those black clouds filling the sky are clearly tribulation clouds. Is someone going to transcend tribulation? Impossible. Among us, even if someone is going to transcend tribulation, they have to wait several decades, right? Tribulation clouds and heavenly lightning appearing at the same time, someone is definitely going to transcend tribulation. If the person transcending tribulation isn't us, then it's very likely to be that man and woman. No wonder they suddenly changed direction and ran to hide in this canyon. Turns out they want to transcend tribulation here. Ha ha ha, it's really heaven's will. Looks like we don't need to make a move, that young man and woman are going to die under the heavenly tribulation. The bandits discussed telepathically. They were all gloating and excited. Yi also had the same thought, a mocking sneer at the corners of his mouth, waiting to watch a good show. He looked down at the canyon from above and muttered to himself, "Heaven is helping me. Looks like I don't need to make a move, those 2 little bastards are going to turn to ashes under the heavenly tribulation soon." After saying that, he used divine sense voice transmission to order the 5 bandits, "Everyone, no need to perfect the grand array. Even if it's set up, it will be destroyed by the heavenly tribulation. You guys stay by the 5 poison token and keep an eye on the movements in the canyon at all times. Keep an eye on those 2 fellows for me. If they are killed by the heavenly tribulation, it's fine. If they luckily transcend the heavenly tribulation, you guys immediately make a move and be sure to kill them." The 5 bandits hurriedly agreeing very readily. Probably in their minds, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao absolutely could not transcend the heavenly tribulation and would definitely be killed by the heavenly lightning. After all, every martial artist would choose an absolutely safe place to avoid being disturbed when transcending tribulation. Even so, there was still a slim chance of survival under the heavenly tribulation. Everyone was certain that there was no need for them to make a move today. They only needed to watch the show. The tribulation cloud vortex and lightning above the canyon became more and more dazzling and terrifying. Even from thousands of miles away, one could clearly see the tribulation clouds and lightning in the sky. 2 groups of tribulation transcendence experts happened to pass by. One of the groups consisted of 3 women. The leader was an old granny with a head full of white hair. She was holding a golden dragon head walking stick. Following behind her was a middle-aged woman in luxurious clothes and a young woman with a pretty face and an icy temperament. When the 3 of them saw the tribulation clouds and lightning in the sky, they secretly discussed for a while before rushing in the direction of the tribulation cloud vortex. The other group consisted of 2 men. The leader was a white-haired old man wearing a purple robe. He held a golden horsetail whisk in his hand and wore a crown with 3 flowers and 7 stars on his head. Behind him was a young man dressed in black. He was tall and sturdy and had a valiant aura. The 2 of them were hurrying through the sea of fire when they suddenly saw the tribulation clouds and lightning in the sky. The purple-robed old man immediately stopped. He frowned as he looked at the tribulation clouds in the sky. He muttered to himself in surprise, "Someone is actually transcending tribulation in the flaming mountain. Are they tired of living?" The young man also raised his head to look at the sky, revealing a shocked expression. He said in disbelief, "The flaming mountain is so dangerous, yet there is actually someone who dares to transcend tribulation here. Even if one transcends tribulation in a safe place, it is still a slim chance of survival. To transcend tribulation in such a dangerous environment, wouldn't one die without a doubt? After saying that, the young man looked at the purple-robed old man and asked, "Martial Uncle Bright Sword, this kind of thing is really rare. Should we go over and take a look?" The purple-robed old man was Martial Lord Bright Sword. He frowned and thought for a moment before saying hesitantly, "Qin Yu, we still have business to do." The young man named Qin Yu bowed and said, "Martial Uncle, so many experts are searching for the glazed fire dragon's lair, but there is no result. Even if we rush over, what's the use? Now that someone is transcending tribulation in the flaming mountain, this kind of thing is very rare. Don't you want to go and take a look? Perhaps the person transcending tribulation is very confident and is a talented person." Qin Yu was curious and wanted to see what was going on, so he tried his best to arouse Martial Lord Bright Sword's interest. Martial Lord Bright Sword understood his thoughts and no longer refused. He chuckled and said, "Sigh, you brat, you clearly want to go and watch the show, yet you're still beating around the bush." Qin Yu pretended to be simple and honest and asked tentatively, "Martial Uncle Bright Sword, does that mean you agree? Let's go and take a look. It won't take long." Martial Lord Bright Sword stroked his beard and nodded in agreement. Soon after, an old man and a young man flew over the sea of fire and rushed to the place where the tribulation cloud vortex appeared. In a cave deep in the canyon. Ji Tianqing had already circulated his energy and adjusted his breathing for a quarter of an hour, raising his cultivation mental state to the peak. He was already prepared to welcome the heavenly tribulation. At this moment, the tribulation cloud vortex high in the sky had already formed. It had a radius of 100 miles and was as black as ink. Billions of lightning bolts flickered in the vortex and were about to condense into heavenly lightning that could destroy the heavens and earth. Ji Tianqing stopped circulating his energy and opened his eyes to look at Yun Yao at the entrance of the cave. He revealed a smile and warned, "Yao Yao, you don't have to worry about me. I'll be fine. Quickly leave this canyon and hide further away. I'm afraid that the heavenly tribulation will affect you." Yun Yao looked at the tribulation cloud in the sky and felt a little nervous. She said with a heart full of worry, "Tianqing, compared to my tribulation cloud, your tribulation cloud is condensing faster and has a wider range. Its power is definitely several times stronger. You must not be careless, and you must not have any accidents." Ji Tianqing understood her feelings, so he nodded and said, "All right, I'll be careful. Don't worry. Don't help me, or else the consequences will be unimaginable." Yun Yao nodded with a solemn expression, then turned around and left. For safety's sake, she entered the reverse water divine sword and manipulated it to become the size of an embroidery needle. She quietly hid on a mountain peak 50 miles away. At such a close distance, she could watch Ji Tianqing transcend the tribulation and protect Ji Tianqing. If Ji Tianqing's life was in danger, she would save him even if she was killed by the heavenly lightning. She had just found a place to hide and manipulated the reverse water divine sword to hide in the rock layer when Ji Tianqing's heavenly tribulation began. Boom! You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.